My name is Susan Miller. I'm 47 years old. I've been married to John for 25 years. Our family includes John, who is also 47, and our daughter Emily, who is in high school. But something happened because of John that almost broke our family apart. It all began when John forgot his phone at home one day when he went to work. He's always on that thing during meals. It's no wonder he leaves it behind sometimes. When I picked up his phone, I saw messages from a woman I didn't know. Are you coming over today or staying with your wife? I need to talk to you, Mia, so please come over. What is all this? I panicked as I read the shocking messages. Then my husband John, realizing he'd forgotten his phone, returned home. Do you know where my phone is? It looks like I left it at home. Come on, if you have it, just give it back. I'm going to be late for work. What's going on? Who's this legal wife? And who's Mia? When I confronted him, John seemed surprised at first but then sighed heavily and began to explain. I was planning to tell you about this. I had everything prepared, but I guess getting caught now is probably the right timing. The right timing? What do you mean? Just like you're thinking, I have a mistress. Those messages you saw were from her. What? You've been cheating. For how long? I guess it's been over 15 years now. Over 15 years? Yeah, her daughter is in junior high school now. She's technically my child. She would be Emily's half-sister. She's facing high school entrance this year. It's going to be tough. So I'm planning to divorce you and marry her. I intend to support my daughter as a father. I couldn't understand what John was saying at all. Daughter Emily is your daughter too, isn't she? Don't you care about her? I didn't say I didn't care about her. Emily has been my precious daughter for 17 years too, but I don't plan to take her with me. It would be awkward to have a daughter who's not biologically related to her mother and the family, you know. Everyone would feel uncomfortable. So I'll leave Emily to you. In return, I'll make sure to pay child support until she graduates from college. And if Emily reaches out, I'll be willing to talk. So that should be fine, right? Are you serious? I'm dead serious. In fact, I think I'm offering a pretty good deal. Oh, and here, I shouldn't forget to give this to you. What's this? I've already filled in my part, so just write down yours and submit it. Let me know once you've filed the divorce papers. I'll come to pick up my stuff once the divorce is finalized. Wait a minute. What are you saying? You're not coming back. Yeah, I'll be living at her place from now on. I'll talk to my folks. You just take care of Emily and don't do anything unnecessary. Well then, thanks for the last 25 years. Take care. Hey, just wait. John handed me a divorce paper and left the house in his usual attire for work. I'm sure her place must have been prepared with all the living necessities for him. How could this? What am I supposed to do now? What's wrong? Why are you upset so early in the morning? Did something happen? My daughter Emily, who was home for the school holiday, came over to me as I was feeling distressed. I shouldn't have burdened her with such heavy news, but in that moment, I ended up telling her everything. Dad has a mistress. He gave me this and left. What? Cheating? And this is a divorce paper? Is Dad serious about this? Why would he? He apparently has another child with his mistress. A child? So I have a half-sister? Yes, from another mother. And what did he say about it? He said he'll pay child support. To take care of you. What about apologies to you? Well, you're the one most affected, Mom. And there are no apologies. What is he thinking? After hearing my story, Emily bit her lip, thinking for a moment before responding. I see. If Dad's going to act like this, then we'll have to come up with our own plan. Huh? What do you mean? Don't worry, it's nothing dangerous. Since Dad seems to have no remorse for betraying us for over 15 years, we'll make sure he deeply regrets what he did. But of course, that requires some planning. But Mom, you're not blaming yourself for Dad's actions, are you? It's all Dad's fault. You don't need to feel guilty. We don't need to hold back. As we watch Dad face the consequences, he's getting what he deserves. So it's only fair that we make sure Dad understands the pain he's caused, right? Well, my daughter is actually the smartest kid in the USA. Her intelligence has amazed adults since she was little. She probably already has a plan in mind for this. Just wait, Mom. I promise I'll make Dad regret what he did. With that, Emily wore a mischievous smile. A month later, Emily and I had settled into our new routine, just the two of us. The door creaked open, and in walked my husband John, but with patches of his hair shaved off as if by a clipper. The first thing he said was, "What the hell were you thinking?" Dad stormed into the house with clippers in hand. "After hearing everything from you, look what you've done to me," he said, pointing at his patchy haircut. John went on a tirade. He explained how he was relaxing at his mistress's house when suddenly his father showed up with clippers and gave him an unplanned haircut. Then he managed to escape and rushed back home in this state just to give me a piece of his mind. "I warned you, didn't I? I talked to Dad, so you weren't supposed to do anything unnecessary. You know how much Dad hates dishonesty. He's always been strict with me because of that, and it's been traumatic. Despite knowing that, you still went and told on me. Are you jealous? Jealous that we might be happy while you're stuck in misery? Is that why you haven't filed for divorce yet? Then you spill everything to Dad. You're truly pathetic. The reason I cheated was because I couldn't stand this side of you, you coward. That's when it happened. What are you misunderstanding? It wasn't Mom who told Grandpa everything. It was me," my daughter calmly responded to the raging John. "What? So Grandpa attacked with clippers, huh? Just as I expected." "What do you mean, as expected? Emily, did you tell Grandpa to attack me with clippers?" "No, I didn't say that. I just handed something to Grandpa, proof of your affair. This goes back a month. Hey Mom, what do you think is the scariest thing to Dad in this world?" Soon after John left, Emily asked me that question. The scariest thing to him? Yes, that would be Grandpa. I once asked Dad what he was most afraid of in this world. He immediately answered Dad. I had also heard about it before. My father-in-law detests dishonesty above all and wouldn't hesitate to correct anyone behaving improperly, even strangers. John was raised strictly by my father-in-law since childhood and said he could never go against him. Dad said before he left, "I'll talk to Dad about it, so don't do anything unnecessary." That's because the last thing Dad wanted was for Grandpa to find out about this situation. So I'm pretty sure Dad won't tell Grandpa the real reason for the divorce. He might say we just couldn't agree on things, or worse, he might even claim you cheated. That's terrible. That's why we need to act first to prevent that from happening. Plus, there's another benefit to telling Grandpa first. Dad is an employee at the company Grandpa runs. Dad got the job through connections, thanks to Grandpa, and has climbed up to the position of manager. Can you imagine what would happen if Grandpa, who hates dishonesty, found out about Dad's affair and secret child of over 15 years? It's going to be a big mess, maybe even a trigger for Dad to get fired. Dad seems to have earned some trust at his company, but Grandpa is definitely Dad's Achilles heel. That's why I plan to use this to our advantage and push Dad into the depths of hell. But first, I need to gather solid evidence of the affair to make Grandpa understand. Saying that, Emily opened the laptop Dad had left behind. Evidence. How are you going to? Normally, you'd need a detective agency to catch evidence of an affair. And there's probably a password on that laptop, right? I doubt you'd leave anything compromising on it. Normally, yes, but I don't need any of that. There's no point in paying someone to find something that's right here. Saying that, my daughter dismissed my concerns and rapidly typed on the keyboard, managing to unlock it in just a few seconds. She then extracted all the relevant information contained within. Wow, you really unlocked it. Well, of course. This is nothing for me now. Let's see what kind of evidence Dad left on this laptop. From their exchanges, it looks like Dad's mistress was an ex-girlfriend they reconnected. When I was still in your belly, Mom, that reunion sparked an affair that lasted over 15 years. Look, here's a photo. Dad's mistress seems to be this woman. Mom, do you recognize her? The photo Emily showed me was one of Dad and his mistress looking very close. I had seen the woman in the photo before. She's Dad's childhood friend. She got married early and moved away from her hometown. But after her divorce, she came back. I met her once when we visited his parents. I see. So she came back to town, and that's when the affair started. I'm truly appalled by my own father. Suddenly, Emily froze upon seeing a particular photo. What's wrong? Did you find something? Look at this. Emily looked at a photo of a girl who appeared to be the hidden child. Probably this is my half-sister, Dad's secret child. Are you okay? If it's too hard for you, Mom can take over, and you don't have to do this anymore, Emily. No, it's not that I mind. I want to see this through to the end. Saying that, Emily turned back to the computer. It seems like this girl hasn't been officially recognized as Dad's child. He hasn't acknowledged her. Well, that makes sense. He was probably planning to acknowledge her after the divorce. I'm not sure if this girl knows about us yet, as Dad said. It's confirmed he has a secret child, but I found out something else that's shocking. Shocking? Dad seems to have bought them a condo. What? A condo? Yes, a new condo right in front of the station. Given the location and it's a high-rise, it must be quite expensive. Oh look, the price is listed online. When I checked the price of the condo my husband bought for his mistress, it was a whopping $1 million. On the other hand, we live in a rental condo I've been leasing since my single days. We discussed buying a house many times, but his consistent response was renting is more cost-effective. So there was this reason behind it. Is that all the information? I was expecting a bit more, honestly. Isn't this enough? It's sufficient, but I wanted more concrete evidence, like photos of them coming out of a hotel. The information we got from this computer includes the mistress and the hidden child's names and photos, and the fact that Dad bought a condo for his mistress. How about we make a direct visit to the condo? If we capture photos of them coming out, that could serve as evidence. Aren't you curious about what kind of life they're leading? Saying that, Emily grinned mischievously. The next day, we headed to the condo where we presumed Dad was staying. The condo looks bigger than in the photos. Really, it's surprising he had enough money to buy a condo for his mistress. Where did he get the money? Mom, isn't that Dad? Looks like they're heading out as a family, Emily pointed. And there were Dad, his mistress, and the hidden child. I quickly captured their image on my camera. From the outside, they look like a normal family. You wouldn't think he's been having an affair for 15 years. They must be considered a happy family by the neighbors. At that moment, we overheard a conversation from the three passing right by our hiding spot. Hey, when's the divorce going to be finalized? You shoved the divorce papers at your official wife before leaving, right? Yeah, but she seems reluctant. Hasn't got any message that she submitted the divorce papers, even though I said I'd pay alimony. What's she hesitating for? Maybe she still has feelings for you, who knows? But even if that's true, you're the only one for me since the beginning. I have no intention of getting back with her, John. Hey Dad, what about me? I'm more important than that other daughter, right? Of course you're my only daughter, Mia. Yay, I don't care if she goes to some famous high school or whatever. Dad chose me. I wonder what kind of face she's making now, being abandoned by Dad. Poor thing. Hearing their outrageous conversation left us astounded. Then, I thought she didn't know since she's not recognized, but she knew about us. No need to hold back then. Let's not just plunge Dad into hell. But those two as well. Emily seemed even more determined to seek revenge after overhearing their talk, glaring at the three with a wrathful expression. But it's good we came here. We got a video of the three leaving the condo, and thanks to their chatter so close to us, we caught their entire conversation. With this evidence, I bet we can demand a much higher amount, and Grandpa won't stay silent for sure. With that evidence in hand, we went to a law firm to draft the claim documents. For the finishing touch, Emily and I headed to my in-laws' house. It's rare for you to visit without notice and just the two of you at that. Something happened. Actually, I shared everything that had occurred with my in-laws, Mike and Lily. Mike started trembling and then exploded in rage. Over 15 years of cheating, and he even has a secret child. That bastard, where is he now? He's been at his mistress's place since he left in the condo he bought her, right in front of the station. What? When Dad said, my daughter is only Mia. Only you, does Dad hate me? After living together all this time, he values that woman's child more. And if Mom and Dad get divorced, does that mean I'm no longer Grandpa and Grandma's granddaughter? I don't want that, Emily. That's not going to happen. Even if they get divorced, you're our only granddaughter. Don't worry, Grandpa will make sure he pays for this. His expression was exactly like Emily's that time. He had a look of burning vengeance on his face. And then, a few days after we left his house, Mike, armed with a clipper, raided the apartment where he was staying. That's how we got to this point. You did this. Sorry to shock you, but I have something to give you. With that, I handed my ex-husband a brown envelope. What's this? Open it, you'll see. He hesitantly opened the envelope and turned pale upon seeing the contents. What? Why? Inside the brown envelope were documents related to child support and division of property. Why? You're wondering why Dad did warrants paying this entire amount, right? I can't understand why you'd question that. But this amount is just since you seem not to understand. Let me explain. It was determined by several factors. I think what Dad has to pay Mom is fair. For that amount, I still have an issue with the amount, but this division of property is absurd. Why do I have to sell the condo I bought? That's ridiculous. I thought you'd say that. What? The condo you bought for your mistress in your name is subject to division of property. That's a well-established fact. It's not something you can argue against. What about them then? You're not telling me they have to leave, are you? Exactly. If a house is being sold, the people living there need to leave. You're heartless. I'll throw those words right back at you. After all these 15 years, you've really outdone yourself in deceiving us, you coward. You seem quite unhappy with these documents, but no matter what you say here, Dad's wishes won't be met. These aren't documents we made up. They were professionally drafted by a lawyer we hired. So if you have any issues with the amount, why don't you hire a lawyer yourself and file an appeal? Whether that'll be successful or not, I can't say. Hearing this, my husband blurted out, Okay, I get it. I'll break it off with her and move out of that condo. That's what you want, right? Apparently, the idea of paying hefty alimony was too much for him. He said he'd break up with her and return home. However, things didn't go as he had hoped. Break up? Move out? Do as you like. It's no longer my concern. Not your concern. This is about us. We're married. We should talk more. Are you misunderstanding something? We're nothing to each other anymore, complete strangers. What are you saying? But you haven't submitted the divorce papers yet. That's only because I've been too busy dealing with your mess to get in touch. I submitted the divorce papers the day you left, so we're already divorced. What? Too bad, Dad. It's too late. The divorce papers have been processed, and you two are divorced. As for the documents, we'll be claiming accordingly. Damn it. And don't forget about the child support payments. I heard it from Mom. You said it yourself, right? That as a father, you would diligently pay child support until I graduate from college. Thinking back, I can't recall any fatherly things you've done for me, but at least for this last part, be responsible and live up to your word, Dad. Jan was left speechless by Emily's words. Then, that moment came. A call came through on my phone. It was John's father, Mike, probably anticipating that the ex-husband had stormed back to me. He called, and his guess was spot on. Seeing that I was on the phone with his father, the ex-husband's face turned pale. Mike wants to talk to you, Dad. No, tell him I'm not here. That's impossible. Besides, Dad knows you're here, so avoiding him now will only make things worse later, won't it? Reluctantly, he took the phone and started talking. Dad, what do you want? I didn't. Why do I have to come home? Wait just a minute. Hey, what did he say? He said I have to come home because he has something to talk about. Well, you better go then. Go? Are you kidding? If I go to Dad, I'm finished. What should I do? But fretting about it here isn't going to help, is it? What do you mean? Grandpa said you're fired. Why? I don't know the details, but if it's serious enough for a firing warning over an affair, you must have done something quite bad, right? Well, looks like you do have an idea by that expression. Then you better hurry to Grandpa's place. Hearing his daughter's words, the ex-husband rushed out of the house in a panic. It seems his position meant everything to him after all. Dad, that was quicker than expected. I heard from Emily. Are you serious about firing me, Dad? Just because of this affair, which has nothing to do with work. And now you're firing me? This is clearly wrongful dismissal. Wrongful dismissal? Have you forgotten all the mistakes you've made? Unauthorized absences, being late, trouble with employees at partner companies are everyday occurrences. Other employees had to clean up your messes while you strolled around like you own the place because you're the president's son and the presumed next president. It's only natural you be laid off for this. This is a fair decision. But so suddenly. True, I've turned a blind eye until now because you're my son, but that ends today. What do you mean by that? After today, I'm cutting ties with you. You betrayed the two people you should have cherished most, trying to find happiness just for yourself. You're no longer my son or anything to me. Never show your face to me again. No, this can't be true. To my father-in-law's declaration, the ex-husband was fired. Furthermore, being told that their familial bond was severed, he collapsed to his knees, screaming in agony. When my father-in-law told us this, Emily and I high-fived each other. However, a few days later, he did as Emily suggested and hired a lawyer to dispute my claims, but his appeal was rejected. In the end, he had to pay exactly as I initially demanded. It seemed John's mistress was entirely dependent on the ex-husband's salary, being a part-time housewife with a meager monthly income. Hence, I admit to what I've done and I'm reflecting on it, but I can't pay such an amount. Half? No, even a 30% reduction would be appreciated. She pleaded for a reduction, as if haggling at a market, but I rejected it. Eventually, her parents had to pay off the debt in her stead. Thus, even though he got his wish to remarry his mistress, he ended up in a terrible living situation. Of course, the hidden child who was supposed to enroll in high school couldn't do it due to her parents' self-inflicted plight. As for us, then, Mom, I'm going to take care. You too, it's really dangerous out there these days. I know, Emily. If anything happens, make sure to contact me. Even if nothing happens, I'll still check in often, and I'll come back home, even if you get tired of me. Since then, Emily has been attending a university and is living on her own for the first time today. But I'm not too worried. After everything she's managed to pull off almost single-handedly, I'm sure she can overcome anything that comes her way.
Unemployed dropout, get out. In the midst of a blizzard, my brother and his wife chased me out, barefoot, into the garden. I will never forget this humiliation. Though I possess neither education, health, nor wealth, the one thing I do have is inner strength. One day, I will make them regret this incident. My name is Courtney. I am a 48-year-old who loves nothing more than to soak in the bath after a long day at work. Especially in this slightly chilly season, a bath feels absolutely divine. Such leisure and enjoyment were things the old me could never afford. In my mid-20s, my brother Nathan started his own business, focusing on environmental issues by creating accessories and interior goods from recycled plastics, driftwood, and sea glass. With hardly any competition, his business was a roaring success, just as he had planned. However, as his company grew, his character seemed to diminish in proportion. Despite having money, he became increasingly reluctant to spend it, finding pleasure in watching his earnings accumulate. Nathan transitioned from being frugal to outright miserly. I lived at home with our mother while Nathan lived alone nearby. But as he became more and more of a cheapskate, he made a habit of returning to our parents' house every Friday night, staying until Sunday morning to save on food and utilities, shamelessly exploiting the short distance to save 2 days' worth of living expenses, yet contributing nothing to our household. But we had no way to kick him out, as our mother, who had raised us single-handedly, was now bedridden with early-onset dementia. With my mother requiring constant care, barely responsive, I had no time to deal with Nathan. He took advantage of the situation and stole money from my wallet to satisfy his cravings, mocking my protests with taunts about my inability to survive without him. He felt entitled to look down on me because I suffer from a chronic illness, a type of autoimmune disease, that with medication and a balanced lifestyle allows for a normal life. However, any imbalance could land me in the hospital. If I were to be hospitalized or collapsed, I would have no choice but to rely on my brother. Since falling ill in middle school and constantly being in and out of the hospital, I ended up with only a middle school education. I did get employed, however my salary is quite modest. My adult life has been relatively stable health-wise, allowing me to keep working, but I could fall ill at any time. Thus, I skimp on food and utilities to save for the future, scraping by while Nathan squanders the money I painstakingly save. With no one else to rely on, I had no choice but to endure his dominance. Despite having no money, education, or a healthy body, I had to comply with my brother's demands. A while had passed and Nathan announced he had gotten married. How typical of him to inform us way after. Just thinking about what kind of person that brother would choose made me feel uneasy. I hoped she would be kind, but when he brought her over on his usual Friday, she appeared prim but was essentially a more intensified version of my brother. My sister-in-law, Janet, worked as Nathan's secretary. As a married couple where both are earning well, one would expect them to be financially independent. Yet, not only did they make their usual weekend visits, they also began coming over 3 times during the week, even when I was not home, using their keys to let themselves in. Previously, they would just eat and leave, but now Janet started bringing their laundry over to save on their water bill, gleefully noting the savings. To top it off, they even had me wash their laundry. When it dried, they would come over again to swap out the clean laundry for their accumulated dirty clothes. It escalated to them taking home toothbrushes I had bought in advance, and sometimes even bringing over a cooler to steal food from the fridge while I was away. It was beyond being miserly. It was theft. I had told the caregiver looking after my mother not to let my brother and his wife in when they visited, but it was considered a family matter, beyond the scope of their services, and they advised resolving it within the family, fearing what might happen if they refused. The home care service I was using was the cheapest in the area, and being disliked by this company would undoubtedly cause problems. Should I change the locks? But then again, I might not be able to rely on my brother in times of trouble. The fear of such a situation arising was too great for me. However, if things continued the way they were, my savings would only decrease. After much deliberation, I told my brother, if you're going to come over, at least help with taking care of our mother. It would save on caregiver expenses. But my brother ignored this. Furthermore, he declared, we've given up our apartment as of today and plan to live here from now on. And true to their word, with barely any belongings, my brother and his wife moved into our house without my consent. After their move, stress caused me to suffer from insomnia and my chronic illness began to worsen. I started getting fevers due to fatigue but didn't want to take time off work. I wanted to save my paid leave for emergencies with my mother. However, my brother and his wife, unconcerned for my well-being, would send me out to the store even with a fever and pushed all the household chores onto me without the slightest contribution to living expenses. Is there any way I could kick out my own brother without causing a commotion? I wondered, naively worrying about such an impossible task. Not long after, my mother passed away. She had developed a complication from a cold and had to be hospitalized. I wasn't able to take care of her at home. I don't remember much after that. The flurry of events and my own poor health had me feverish throughout the mourning period. It might have been due to exhaustion, but eventually my chronic illness worsened, which required me to take a significant amount of steroids for treatment. Though I was able to avoid hospitalization, the medication weakened my immune system, and I was advised to recuperate at home and avoid going out. When I informed my company, they said, "We understand you're going through a tough time, however we would like you to resign." Reason was due to many missed workdays when I had to take care of my mother. Regrettable, but I had no choice. Thus, I began my recovery at home. However, what? Why did you quit your job? You should have just taken a leave of absence. My brother exclaimed angrily. Janet, with a serious expression on her face, added, if you aren't working, who's going to pay for the household expenses? I couldn't take time off. I plan to recover at home for a while. If you two plan to live here, you should contribute to the living expenses. It's not fair for me to keep paying for everything. Upon hearing my words, my brother and his wife exchanged displeased looks. No way. What? My brother, with a serious face, said he didn't want to bear the living expenses, leaving me shocked. We moved in because it saved us money and allowed us to save up. If it doesn't save us money, then it's just a property with an annoying sister attached, right, Janet? That's right. But we don't want to rent an apartment and pay rent again at this point. But this house, since it's quite old, it's much cheaper than renting an apartment. Oh, is that so? How would it be if we started paying the living expenses? Compared to now, practically being free of charge, the burden would indeed increase, but it would still be much cheaper than before. I see. How long will you be unable to work? Needless to say, I was appalled by my brother and his wife's cold calculation of financial matters and Janet's question. An ominous feeling washed over me. For now, I don't know how long it's going to take me to recover. I'll see once I get better. Janet pondered my answer for a while with a hum of contemplation. Hey, Nathan, what if we just take this house for ourselves? If Courtney can't work, we'd have to support her. It would be a loss for us if we had to pay for living expenses and such. Exactly. Courtney is just in the way. You're right. We should just kick out the unemployed dropout. Nathan said, grabbing my clothes and smiling. You can't be serious. Of course I am. It's cheaper if it's just the two of us rather than three. You're in the way. You're the ones who barged into this house. Why should I be the one to leave? You're way too loud. I'll apologize, so just be quiet. Go on, get out. Sorry, Courtney. Despite their apologies, my brother and his wife showed no remorse as they forcibly pushed me from the living room through the large window out to the garden. Goodbye. With a big smirk on their face, they threw my bag packed with belongings while ignoring my pleas to let me back in. They locked the window and drew the curtains, making sure I couldn't see inside. No matter how much I knocked, I was ignored and left outside in the heavy snow, barefoot and without a destination or money in my wallet. It was infuriating to be thrown out despite having paid for living expenses and taking care of our deceased mother. However, I had no desire to live under the same roof as my brother and Janet, who spoke to me in such a manner. When I was kicked out, I had nothing but the clothes I was wearing, so I spent some time resting inside a train station. It was the only place with a roof and lights on at night. During the day, I looked at free job magazines and finally found a live-in part-time job. Considering my weak body, I technically shouldn't be allowed to work. However, I couldn't afford to say no. I decided to work on a farm, hiding my illness. Even though it was a physically demanding job, I had no time to be picky and ended up taking the first live-in job I could find. This became a turning point in my life. The family running the farm was very kind. They soon noticed my illness, and it turned out their daughter had the same condition. They allowed me to work without pushing myself too hard. Though I thought physical labor wasn't for me, the work was mostly in the morning, allowing me to have a clear distinction between work and rest. I found that if I rested well in the afternoon and went to bed earlier than others, it didn't interfere with my work at all. Thinking back, I had been juggling between caring for my mother, working, and dealing with my brother and his wife. Life here was like paradise compared to that. After getting involved in agriculture, I realized I had been wasting a lot of vegetable scraps that could be used for dishes like pickled vegetables or tea. There's hardly anything that's truly considered waste. That's when it hit me. What if we use the discarded parts to make and sell processed goods? I shared my idea with the farm owners, and since such services were rare at the time, they suggested, if you can make something from the crops we don't need, would you mind using them? Turning what farmers deemed unnecessary into sellable products was akin to reducing food loss, a concept that's well regarded today. Many found the idea intriguing, and soon, with the help of the farm owners, I began learning about business management and started my own company. 3 years after being kicked out by my brother, I turned 30. 7 years later, my company had grown significantly, with annual sales exceeding $20 million. Focusing on food loss and other environmental issues seemed to have been a good choice, as my efforts started getting media attention. A decade had passed since I separated from my brother. The only thing that bothered me was that we ended up doing similar work, but seeing my company grow felt like being recognized by society. Owning a company allowed me to employ capable staff and work without overexerting myself. On yet another ordinary day, my company got featured on a local news program, and I visited the studio. After the recording, as I was getting up, I was greeted by my brother Nathan, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. I'm here because my company will be featured on this program next week. I was next door for an interview. I heard you were coming, so I decided to show my face. You should be grateful, he said with a smug look. Janet, my sister-in-law, was there too. The staff seemed to know about our relationship and suggested, it's surprising to hear your siblings. Having you both on next week's show could be interesting. I didn't expect him to be here and it made me uncomfortable, but it was a good opportunity. Pardon me, but who are you? What? I asked, without a smile and tilting my head seriously. Nathan looked surprised, and the staff were speechless. Have we met somewhere before? Come on, Courtney, stop joking. What are you saying? I lost my memory about 10 years ago due to stress. According to the staff, you're my brother, right? I don't remember anything. Can I confirm a few things? Yeah. You didn't know I had amnesia? Even though we're real siblings. Were we not on good terms? We were very close. We even lived together. Nathan hesitantly answered, choosing to lie given the presence of others. How come we are living separately now? It's because I got married. I actually kept a diary. It starts with being kicked out of the house barefoot in heavy snow. What? You're also surprised, it seems. If you know anything, could you please tell me? If we were so close, why was I kicked out in the middle of winter? Was it some kind of incident? No, it's just... Apparently, a couple named Nathan and Janet suddenly moved in with me while I was caring for our mother and eventually kicked me out. I asked without showing much expression, pretending to be genuinely inquiring about their names, causing a stir among the staff. The company president and his wife's name are Nathan and Janet, right? Clearly, both my brother and Janet realized they were being talked about and turned pale. After that couple moved in, I seemed to have become stressed and fell ill. I was forced to quit my job and even got kicked out of the house because they said it would increase their burden if I stayed. Quite scary if what's in the diary is true. Plus, I apparently supported them and got no help with living expenses in return, doing all the household chores alone. I wonder who these people are? I don't think I am the type to live with strangers, but I don't remember anything. Maybe you know something? By this point, the staff were looking at my brother and his wife with cold eyes. Some started to think, maybe she got amnesia from the shock of being kicked out. It was hard to deny in that situation. Oh well, my brother and Janet stood there not knowing what to do, looking as if they wanted to say something. As I was enjoying their dilemma, the director's voice rang out, "What's going on?" Turning around, I saw the cameraman apologizing repeatedly. The staff quickly approached and informed us. It seems the camera wasn't switched off, and the conversation was broadcasted. Unexpectedly, this turned out to be a fortunate event for me. Nathan was furious, yelling, "What are you doing?" And Janet shouted, "Do something." Seeing their reaction, the staff started saying, "So you did kick out your sister? Wow, that's cruel," and so on. Realizing there was no way out, Nathan, in frustration, exclaimed, "It's all your fault." "Huh? What did I do?" I asked. "You remember everything, don't you?" Nathan accused. "What do you mean? I would appreciate it if you could tell me." The moment I said that, my brother Nathan froze on the spot. He realized that explaining what he remembered would require him to confess his own wrongdoings. Janet seemed to realize the same thing and rushed over to Nathan, urging him to stop, saying, "Let's stop this. It could affect the company's reputation." Encouraged by Janet, Nathan muttered, "You'll remember this," and left the scene. Later on, the events of that day were published in a weekly magazine article. Of course, I was approached for an interview, but I stuck to the story that I don't remember anything. If I said anything, they would just deny it. However, an evasive answer from the perpetrator is just like a politician's "I do not recall." You say you don't remember, but doesn't your brother remember? They pressed, and as Nathan continued to give vague responses, his misdeeds were written up as if they were facts. Of course, since it wasn't proven to be the truth, they couldn't explicitly write it out. But to anyone reading, it seemed like, if he's not answering clearly, he probably did it. As a result, Nathan acquired a negative image in the public eye as an evasive manager and prone to cover-ups, which inevitably affected the company's image. Consequently, the company's performance began to decline rapidly. The fame of being a young, handsome CEO vanished into thin air. On my end, I was seen as someone who must have gone through a lot of hardship to achieve success, which naturally led to good business performance. About 2 years later, Nathan resigned as the company's representative. Just having Nathan as the representative was creating a negative image for the company. So he was ousted by the vice president. I heard that a faction of vice presidents within the company wanting to remove Nathan even staged a coup d'etat. The company, struggling with continuous losses, couldn't pay employee salaries and had to reluctantly dip into the savings Nathan had been so reluctant to use. Nathan and Janet, now jobless, came to me begging to be allowed to work at my company. "Let's forget about the past. Can't you hire us?" I declined, saying, "I can't remember you nor the past you're asking to forget. Besides, we're currently cutting staff costs, so." The fact that the next day 15 new employees joined my company was a secret. Since then, I've ignored all contact from Nathan. There was a time I couldn't have imagined doing such a thing for fear of being abandoned by my brother. But now, I'm okay. I have trustworthy colleagues and have gotten married. After undergoing fertility treatments, I was also blessed with a child and am leading a fulfilling life. I will never be afraid of my brother again. If you live diligently, God will take good care of you and you will be rewarded. Just as my mother taught me when I was a child, the encounters I've had with many people helped me when I was at my lowest, and who led me through it all might have been God himself. Who knows? I will continue to live diligently, holding my mother's teachings close to my heart. I hope to be a mother my children can be proud of, just like my own mother was to me. You're an adult. Don't rely on your parents anymore, you parasite. You're only staying in this house because you don't have to pay rent, aren't you? Such a spoiled excuse won't be tolerated. Get out right now. Michael's words were cold and sharp. They call me jobless because I work from home. Even though I didn't want it, they placed my mother in a nursing home. I couldn't take it anymore. Karen giggled, looking at me oddly. I truly couldn't understand what was so funny. My name is Rachel. Until now, I had spent relaxed days at my parents' home. Happy family days, always centered around the warmth of my parents. However, one day, an accident changed my mother's life. Now, she needs a wheelchair to go outside and can't move around the house without a walker. Still, I was always moved by her acceptance of this change. Alongside her, my father, Richard, has always been the strong pillar supporting our family. Yet, he's now in his 70s. His age never showed when he supported my mother, and he always appeared so reliable. That's why I've stayed home all this time, helping them. But all that changed with one unexpected event. Suddenly, my father collapsed and passed away. It was a heart attack. From that day, our home became even quieter. Amidst that silence, I was lost, not knowing what to do. The sudden news of my father's death was unbelievable for our family. Linda, my mother, was especially engulfed in deep sorrow and cried until the funeral. Seeing her like that broke my heart. Though I'm the eldest daughter, traditionally, the role of the chief mourner should be taken by the eldest son, Stephen. But he said, let Rachel handle that tedious task, and dodged the responsibility nonchalantly. On the day of the funeral, I didn't get a chance to cry until the moment my father was cremated. I was too busy with my duties. I couldn't stop my tears from flowing when reality hit me at the crematorium. Seeing me, Lisa, Stephen's wife, remarked coldly, "Aren't you embarrassed, crying so much as an adult?" Michael joined in, saying, "It's pitiful. I wish you'd calm down a bit." Despite being taken aback by their words, I took my mother's wheelchair and spent some quiet moments with her away from the crowd. We held each other's hands and shared memories of my father, his gentle smile, and the days we spent together. As we reminisced, Linda and I decided determinedly, from now on, it's just the two of us. Let's join our strengths and look forward. After the funeral, Michael and Lisa left without saying a word to us. I never imagined they'd leave so early, considering it was our father's funeral. With Dad's sudden passing, something changed within our family. Stephen's attitude especially felt somewhat distant, but Mom comforted me, saying, "Everyone has their way of grieving. Stephen is probably shedding tears inside." So I suppressed my feelings. After that, a quiet life began for Mom and I. I worked as a freelance programmer at home. My parents never truly grasped what I did for a living. However, since I consistently contributed to the household finances, they probably believed I was working genuinely. As I continued to do my programming work at home, taking care of household chores and caring for my mother became challenging. When my father was around, he handled most of the household work. But now, I'm responsible for all household tasks and taking care of my mother. Still, I couldn't compromise on my job as a programmer. A significant issue was the debt my father had taken on as a cosigner for a friend. That friend of his ran away, leaving our family to shoulder the debt. My father, even after retirement, took on part-time jobs, trying his best to repay it. But with him gone, that responsibility fell on me. It was tough every day, but Mom and I were prepared to face any challenges together. I worked hard to repay the debts as the debt collectors came every month. It was nerve-wracking when the repayment date approached. Handling house chores, working, caregiving, and shouldering all these responsibilities were harder than I thought. But I didn't want to worry my mother. So, no matter how exhausted I was, I always tried to be cheerful around her. However, every time Michael visited, it felt like all my efforts went down the drain. His house is about an hour's drive from our family home. While I appreciate him occasionally checking on Mom, he always criticized my work. "Are you still obsessed with that keyboard job?" He always mocked the work I was seriously committed to. How many times do I have to tell you? I'm earning decently as a freelancer. Whether you like it or not, I'm choosing and walking my own path. Freelancing, to be honest, just sounds like you're showing off, doesn't it? He sarcastically remarked as usual. Michael has always been the perfect son, admired by everyone ever since we were kids. I've always been compared to him, often recognized merely as Michael's sister. Just like always, his visit started with some nitpicking towards me, but today, he seemed to have something serious to discuss with Mom. After a brief exchange, he swiftly moved to her room. I was a bit curious and discreetly observed what was happening inside. Michael, looking a bit disgruntled, was voicing his concerns about my work. Isn't it because you've spoiled Rachel that she hasn't taken on a proper job? His voice was filled with clear dissatisfaction. Our mother, with a look of acceptance, took a deep breath and responded, I may not know in detail what Rachel is doing, but I believe she's chosen her path and is doing her best. If she's happy with it, that's what matters to me. Michael frowned at her words. But isn't it your fault that Rachel's always cooped up at home? For Rachel's sake, maybe it's best if you move to a senior home. At that moment, I felt a strong urge to defend my mother and share my determination. I chose to be a freelancer, captivated by the flexible hours and the allure of programming. The time I could spend with my mother and being able to support her were part of that decision. But they weren't the only reasons. I impulsively opened the door and, as I walked toward my mother, I said, It's not because of you that I chose this path, Mom. I chose this job because it's the right one for me. Linda smiled with gratitude. I know you didn't choose this just for me, Rachel. With Michael's surprised face in my peripheral view, I continued, I never see you as a burden, Mom. My mother gently held my hand in response to my words. At that moment, I felt our bond has deepened more than ever before. Rachel, thank you. I'm so grateful for all the care you've given me with all your heart. But I want you to have more time for yourself. Tears welled up in my eyes at her words. Rachel, you're an adult. You should be shining in a bigger world. There's no need to be tied down to this house. His voice was as stern as always, but there was a hint of concern. After he escorted me out of the room, Michael began discussing moving our mother into a senior home. Before I knew it, it was decided that she would live in a new place. The house felt so quiet and lonely compared to the times when our family was together. Sometimes when I visited Mom at the senior home, I felt relieved seeing her chatting happily with new friends. However, somewhere deep down, I felt angry that Michael had made the decision on his own. One day, I received an unexpected call from Michael. Keep Sunday free, he said without checking my availability, and hung up. I was fed up with his domineering attitude. Come Sunday morning, Michael and his wife Karen arrived. The moment they entered my room, a surprising proposal came up. Don't you think this house is a bit too big for you, Rachel? Karen added with a smile. Actually, we were thinking of moving into this house. Rachel, can you find another place to stay? I was taken aback, and all I could mutter was, what? Michael blurted out, You've been relying on our parents even as an adult, haven't you? You never leave this house because you don't have to pay rent. There's no way such a lame excuse can be acceptable. Just leave now. Karen stood next to him with a smirk on her face. A whirlwind of emotions rose within me, but I managed to respond. Fine, I'll leave. But from now on, stay out of my business. In response, Michael suggested, let's sever our sibling ties then. It will give both of us a new start, right? I nodded in agreement, saying, that's fine with me. Soon after, I began searching for a new place and quickly found an apartment I liked. Moving was relatively quick since I didn't have much stuff. The new apartment was just right for living alone. It was bright with good ventilation and very comfortable. The pressure I felt in the large house back home gradually faded in this new environment. To my surprise, I quickly began to enjoy this new phase of my life. Even shopping at the nearby small supermarket was fun. This fresh start brought me new discoveries and hope. On a sunny day, a month later, I got an unexpected call from Michael, who had claimed we had severed ties. There was a hint of urgency in his voice. Rachel, is it true that Dad had accumulated debts? I realized that I hadn't told Michael about it. For me, the debt issue had become like an everyday thing, and I didn't think it was anything special. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The entire neighborhood is buzzing with rumors. Karen's too scared to even step outside. How did you manage to keep those intimidating debt collectors quiet? I responded calmly. It's quite simple. I was paying back the debt every month. Really? But the collectors say it's $1,000 a month. How did you manage to pay that? Well, it was a bit tight, but my freelance work was going well, so I managed. I had been working hard and supporting both the debt repayment and our household. Michael, on the other hand, had a stable job in a big company but hadn't seen much career growth or salary increase. I had been guessing that my income might be more than his, and it seemed I was right. Michael sounded desperate. Honestly, $1,000 is a bit too much for me. Can you help me out? I replied coldly, reminding him of our previous conversation. We've severed our sibling ties, remember? Discuss with Karen and manage your finances. Without waiting for a response, I hung up. The calls from Michael didn't stop. I had a feeling something major had happened. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Looking through the peephole, I saw Michael and Karen, both looking quite remorseful, holding a gift probably as a token of apology. They had learned my new address from Mom and came over. Without opening the door, I spoke through the intercom. "Why have you come here?" I asked. Tears were evident in Michael's eyes as he said, "I'm really sorry. I have no one else to turn to. Please help me." Karen was also bowing her head in the background. It seemed Michael had made some bad investments and lost a significant amount of money. Their plan was to take over the family home, cut down living expenses, and repay the debt with the inheritance from our father. The whole idea of moving Mom to a nursing home and driving me out of the house was all Michael's plot. But all they found from our father's inheritance was a massive debt. I thought we'd claim the house and pay back the debts with Dad's inheritance. I had no idea all he left behind was this much debt, he said, his voice choked with emotion. However, we had decided to cut ties as siblings. Don't you remember? We decided we're not siblings anymore. If you keep bothering me, I'll have to talk to the police, I said coldly, dismissing them both. I could tell from their expressions they were devastated, but what happened to them was none of my business. A while later, during a walk near my old home, I discovered that it was up for sale. Surprised, I spoke to a neighbor who told me about the constant confrontations between Michael, Karen, and the debt collectors. They seemed to have disappeared suddenly, possibly due to their financial troubles. I just hoped they were happy, wherever they were. My life, on the other hand, was fulfilling. The work was busy. There were plenty of delightful events to keep me going, especially the times I went out with friends from the tennis club or the wonderful dates with a special someone I met there. I shared the news with Mom, saying, "Mom, I've met someone." She smiled happily and said, "As long as you're happy, I am too." Her words filled my heart to a brim. I'm looking forward to the future, walking side by side with the person I've chosen to share my life with. My future looks bright. I'm a little shocked that you would criticize my mother-in-law. If you're not working, why don't you get out of here? My sister-in-law and mother-in-law, who did not know that I was taking over my mother-in-law's debt, threw these words at me without the slightest sense of gratitude. Yes, I understand. But it's up to you guys from now on. The day I packed my bags, they realized a fact I had been hiding and put their heads together. My name is Emma. I am 32 years old, a busy career woman working in an office in the city. When I was a student, I spent most of my time in the corner of the library, absorbed in my books. After I got a job, I was buried under a mountain of work and forgot to take time for myself. One of my friends, who sincerely cared about me, said, "Emma, why don't you try to cherish your love life a little?" And she organized a group blind date for me. Then, a man whose eyes met mine was John, who worked in a building in the city center. He is a fresh salaryman working in a building in the city center. And to my surprise, he seemed to be a little interested in me. I was nervous about the feeling of dating after a long time, but supported by his kind words, we gradually opened our hearts to each other. Then he made a gentle confession to me, and our love accelerated. Only 1 year later, we decided to get married. It was like a dream come true that I, who had been so absorbed in my work, could stand at such a wonderful turning point in my life. My friend who organized the group blind date was also surprised at our sudden development. She said, "Oh, really? You're getting married?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?" but it's great. I'm so glad I organized that group blind date. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the wedding. I'm looking forward to it. Thus, I was to open the door to a new life. First, we reported to each other's families. Seeing me so happy, my parents welcomed him warmly. Emma, you haven't told me about your boyfriend for a long time, so I was a little worried that maybe you wouldn't get married. John, please take care of her from now on. When I heard these words, I felt as if I realized for the first time what my parents really thought of me. I realized that parents think a lot of things without saying them. My family had been basically free to do whatever I wanted, so there was no pressure to get married. But it seems that in my parents' mind, there was a wish to see their daughter happily married someday. Knowing such a parent's wish made my heart warm a little. And when I visited John's house for the first time, I met his family with nervous excitement. But his mother and father were both very warm and made me feel very safe. Next, we had dinner with the whole family. While I was looking forward to it, I was also a little nervous, especially because I had heard that John's sister, Melissa, was there. She was only 25 years old, and her choice of words was a little rough at times, which made me a little confused. She asked me, Emma, you're already at that age? Weren't you getting married too late? I was a little shocked to hear her say things like, I would have decided sooner if I were you. But John followed up and we had a nice dinner afterwards. We then planned our wedding and had a happy wedding at a place we loved. We had a lot of friends and family there, and the day was really great. Our honeymoon was so much fun, and when we returned home, we started our new life together. Life together was fresh, and every day was so much fun. We went out on dates and watched movies at home. I felt that newlyweds are really happy. It has been about 2 years since we got married. One day, our peaceful everyday life changed drastically. We received the news that my father-in-law had passed away. Of course, I knew he had health problems, but I had not expected him to pass away so soon. My husband and I were deeply saddened by this sudden news. My mother-in-law's grief was especially deep, and I could feel her emotions as I looked at her. But our surprise was compounded by what we subsequently found out. In fact, my mother-in-law was in deep debt. It was apparently due to the fact that she had been cheated by some unscrupulous person and lost a large sum of money. When we learned of this fact, we could only gape. My husband, with his usual gentle nature, said he wanted to help her somehow. So, we decided to use our shared savings to reduce my mother-in-law's debt as much as possible. I thought it would be too hard for her to bear that heavy debt alone after my father-in-law's death. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was a little unexpected. She said something like, if I am in trouble again, can I ask John for help? My husband was a little surprised and replied, that's a little. My mother-in-law said something positive, but I'll find a way to get more money somehow. But my husband was worried. I hope that's not gambling. We kept a watchful eye on my mother-in-law and were on the lookout for any trouble she might get herself into again. In the midst of all this, my husband was suddenly injured and had to be hospitalized. That event also became a big ordeal for my husband and me. Since every day was spent flitting back and forth from the hospital to take care of my husband, I never noticed any changes in my mother-in-law's daily routine. Then one day, after my husband was discharged from the hospital, I decided to pay a little visit to his parents' home. During our first reunion in a long time, I could sense that something had changed in the atmosphere. Mom, long time no see. My husband greeted her with a smile, and my mother-in-law said, John, you are getting better. Can you run again? She smiled at him and said. While smiling at this exchange, my husband began to flip through my mother-in-law's bank book. To his surprise, the money in his mother-in-law's bank book, which we had accumulated after her previous debts had been repaid, was almost completely gone. What's wrong with this bank book, Mother? My husband exclaimed in surprise, to which his mother-in-law replied with a slightly embarrassed smile, You know, I had tea with friends and found a nice little bag. And then I found myself in this mess. She laughed bitterly. With that one word, my husband and I froze in complete surprise. It was as if we had saved money for our mother-in-law's future, and she had spent it happily without a care in the world. My husband couldn't help but say, "Mom, you shouldn't spend it like this. Do you know how much we put our hearts into giving you money for your future?" He said something like that. Seeing my mother-in-law's remorse, we became truly concerned about her future. We suggested that she move in with us to support her life closer to us. When we broached the subject, my mother-in-law's eyes lit up with joy, and she gave up her house and moved into our apartment. Our new shared life together began, and my mother-in-law seemed to enjoy every day of it. The three of us laughed and talked around the table at every meal, and my mother-in-law volunteered to help with the housework, which made life surprisingly easy for both of us. Her upbeat mood was infectious, and our days became brighter and warmer. I said, "Mom, what would you like for lunch today?" I think I'll have udon." "That sounds good." Since I was working remotely, I was in a position to monitor how my mother-in-law spent her money. Since my husband and I, provided her living expenses and my husband managed my mother-in-law's account, there was supposed to be no worry about her spending excessive money. However, we kept a close eye on her, worried that she might spend the money in some way. These days continued, and in no time at all, 6 months passed. One afternoon, while we were relaxing in the living room, the intercom rang. We wondered who it was, and when I answered, I found my sister-in-law, Melissa, standing there. I said, "Melissa, it's been a while. Is my mother there?" I was a little surprised to hear her ask such a question without even saying hello, but I showed her into the living room. "Mom, it's been a while." "Oh, Melissa, what brings you here?" "I just wanted to see your face once in a while." "Thanks, I'm glad you're here. How are you?" "Of course. I'm fine. John is with me." "So, do you want to go to lunch with me?" "Sure, let's go." Melissa must have taken my mother-in-law to a restaurant or something. We decided to wait at home. When they came home in the evening, we looked at them and their faces changed. Then Melissa said, "Emma, you are tormenting my mother, aren't you?" I was surprised and could not understand what she was saying. My mother-in-law also looked at me sternly. My husband said, "What are you talking about? There is no way Emma would do such a thing." He immediately took my side, but Melissa would not budge. "John is being deceived too. Mom says she can't go outside and she hears Emma is saying things inside the house." We could only be amazed. Indeed, there were times when my mother-in-law would ask to go shopping and we would refuse because she would waste money. Also, my mom said you were taking her money. I had to admit that this statement surprised me. Did my mother-in-law think so, or did Melissa blow it that way? In any case, it seemed that Melissa and my mother-in-law had joined together in accusing me. "Now, what do you want from me?" I was about to feel like I was bewitched by a fox. What on earth did they want to tell me? I wondered if they just wanted to say something to me. At that moment, my sister-in-law said something I never thought she would say. She said, "I want you to leave our house. I feel like my mother can't really live happily with you. Because I can't believe you treat my mother-in-law so coldly." Her face clouded over. My mother-in-law looked as if she wanted to say something and turned to me. "If you were gone, I would be able to relax and enjoy my time with John and Melissa." I was surprised by her words, but I could not say anything. In fact, they did not know that I had previously paid off her debts for my mother-in-law by cutting into my savings. Looking back, I probably should have made it clear to them at the time that I had not taken it out as our marital savings, but as my own. When I looked at my husband's face, he looked very angry. His hands were clenched and his body was shaking a little. Melissa said, "My mother and I are going to live here together from now on. So, I want you to leave," my sister-in-law said again. Taking a deep breath for a moment, I answered my sister-in-law, "I understand. but I won't get involved in what happens next. After that exchange, my husband and I decided to leave the house. And on the day we moved out, they were surprised to discover one truth. Looks like you've made arrangements to move out right away after all. Yes, I have something to tell Melissa. Yes, what is it? My husband chuckled and said, actually, I'm getting older and I was thinking that I should put the house in Melissa's name. My sister-in-law's eyes sparkled, and she said, really? It's going to be my house? She said excitedly. My husband quietly produced the documents for the change of name and said, as long as you sign here, that's all right. My sister-in-law happily said, I can't believe I have my own apartment, and signed it. My husband and I looked at each other stealthily and exchanged smiles at the success of our plan. Well, it's time to start getting ready to leave. What, John? Are you really leaving? Yes, I've decided to leave too. Oh, even John is leaving? Do you really have to leave with Emma? If I'm not with Emma, I don't feel comfortable either. It's normal for married couples to be together. I knew you would say that, but then what are we going to do about future house expenses and stuff? That's something you'll have to devise and pay for on your own. Wait a minute. I quit my job because I believed you would support me, okay? My husband and I could not hide our surprise at my sister-in-law's sudden statement. If you keep this up, you're going to get me and our mother into a lot of trouble. That's fine if you can devise a way to live on your own. You have our mother's pension, and if you save a little, you can manage. Yes, and if you add my pension to that, we can manage. Since you're going to live here, we need to be creative about it. My sister-in-law looked a little satisfied with my mother-in-law's kind words. Indeed. It's my new home. If I save a little money, I should be able to get by. However, my husband and I laughed inwardly at my sister-in-law saying such a thing, not knowing that the property was a rental. About that time, the movers arrived. We welcomed them and began to move more and more stuff out. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law rolled their eyes at the sight. What are you doing? Getting ready to move out. Are you taking everything? Of course. We bought all this stuff. Do I have to buy everything new? That's right. I wish you had known that and acted accordingly. Well, we better get going. My husband smiled and said, and we left the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law froze in amazement for a while. After a while, my sister-in-law called my husband's cell phone. She said, hey, John, what's with the rent bill all of a sudden? I was a little mistaken. Could it be that I am not the owner of this house? Who told you about that? Well, I'm actually renting this house. The document you signed at that time, which was the rental agreement. So, it's only natural that you should be charged for the rent. Seriously? I didn't know that at all. It's where you live, so you have to pay the rent. But my salary is not that much compared to you. You may laugh, but Emma actually makes more money than I do. Oh, no. It's true. She is working hard at a remote company that pays pretty well. That's why we were able to live so comfortably in that apartment. My sister-in-law was so surprised that she was speechless for a while. Next, I heard my mother-in-law's worried voice. We're so sorry, she said. I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider and come back? My husband responded gently but firmly. Thank you, Mother, but it's hard for me to go back because of your attitude toward Emma. She is the most important to me. Please take care of the rest. You will take care of it. After that exchange, I heard various rumors. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law had apparently been forced to look for an apartment after getting tripped up on rent payments. They are now trying to make do in a small apartment that is barely big enough for the two of them to live in, but it is said that they are having financial problems and occasional fights. They are also concerned about the neighbors' eyes on them. John and I have started a new life in our new house. Every day is fun and full of happiness. My name is Kristen. Despite being raised in a family that was far from wealthy, I managed to secure a job and get married through hard work. My husband, Matt, is an employee at a luxury hotel. I believed that Matt and I would live a happily married life. However, I never expected what ended up happening to me. I grew up poorer than the average family, but I never blamed my parents. Ignoring their own desires, they spent time taking me out and taught me about the local culture. Maybe they loved geography, but as a child, I worried they were overextending themselves. While I was grateful for my parents' efforts, I didn't want to be a burden. Therefore, I had decided to start working after graduating from middle school. My mother, thinking of my employment, advised it would be better to go to high school for your future. My father also supported me, saying we have enough money to cover your high school. I was happy my parents felt that way, but my desire to let them relax as soon as possible was stronger. Don't worry, if I start working early in life, I learn more quickly, I said, without knowing if that would be true. The reality is, there was no guarantee of finding a job. At that time, however, I had a foreign friend who had moved from overseas when I was just starting middle school. Her name was Maya, and like me, her family was not wealthy. The commonality quickly brought us together, and we gradually became closer. Maya could speak a little English, so we managed to communicate. I naturally learned Spanish through my conversations with her. By the time I was in my third year of middle school, I could converse fairly well in Spanish. Even though I had only completed middle school, a travel agency decided to hire me because of my language skills. They valued my ability to speak Spanish. Maya also started working after graduating from middle school, and we didn't contact each other as often as we used to. Once I got a job, I worked very hard. I was desperate to earn an income, and soon, I turned 26. Around that time, there was a lounge in the luxury hotel I often used for work. It was comfortable, with casual meals and a cafe-style menu with reasonable prices. My colleagues and I often had meetings there. Matt was a waiter working in that lounge. The hotel had many guests from overseas, so Matt also spoke Spanish. I also sometimes dealt with foreign clients. Because we both could speak Spanish, Matt and I had a lot in common and felt a mutual attraction to each other. Matt approached me, and we started dating, leading quite smoothly to marriage. I never imagined that a girl from a poor family like me would get married. I feel moved just thinking about it. Anyway, I was looking forward to the new and enjoyable life that was about to begin. But an unexpected situation awaited me. Before the marriage, Matt made a proposal. If you're okay with it, I'd like to live together at my parents' house. The reason behind this was that Matt had lost his father a few years ago and was worried about his mother living alone. His mother's health had started to wane, so she needed someone to watch over her. At that time, I was a teleworker who could do most of my work from home, so I could take care of my mother-in-law and also take care of the household chores. On the other hand, Matt himself often worked long hours, meaning he spent limited time at home. He rarely had days off, so it seemed convenient for him to have me, the teleworker, around. However, I couldn't just say yes to him. That was because when I met Matt's mother before the marriage, she gave me the silent treatment after hearing about my educational background. Which university did Kristen graduate from? She asked. I replied honestly, actually, I didn't go to college. I started working right after graduating from middle school. My mother-in-law just stared at me for a while and then fell silent. From her expression, I could clearly feel her disdain for me. You only went to middle school? Well, she said, looking down on me with that gaze. From that experience, I felt that living with my mother-in-law would not go well. I conveyed this indirectly to Matt. I feel like your mother doesn't like me much. You feel like my mom is cold towards you? That can't be. She trusts me, and she would never think badly of the wife I chose, he said, laughing it off. I wondered if I was overthinking things. Matt also promised to talk to his mother if there were any problems. Trusting him, I agreed to live with my mother-in-law. However, once we started living together, I was unable to build a good relationship with her. and I faced the gap between my ideal and reality. When Matt was around, his mother always greeted him with a warm smile, saying, "Matt, thank you for living with us. I really appreciate it." Matt would reply, "Of course. I thought it would make things easier for you." But her attitude towards me was completely different and terribly distant. She would say to me with little expression, as if giving orders to a servant, "Kristen, make sure you support Matt. Don't be a burden." It seemed like my mother-in-law was belittling me. But at that particular moment, Matt defended me, saying, "It's no problem. Kristen is doing her job well in her field." I did not miss the frown that comment brought to my mother-in-law's face. I decided to consult Matt if any problems arose in the future, and to handle things in my own way. I thought living together would help us understand each other better. I didn't want our relationship as a family to become strange. With such hopes, we started living together, but it often didn't go so smoothly. One day, as I was working on my computer, my mother-in-law suddenly entered the room and demanded irritably, "Kristen, when will you clean my room? Make sure it's done by 10 a.m. every day." I was puzzled by this sudden demand. We had never discussed such rules or agreed on the extent of my household chores. I thought that if she had explained things as such nicely from the start, I might have understood. I wasn't always available due to my job, but thinking it childish to argue on the spot, I paused my work and replied, "Understood. I'll start right away," and began cleaning her room. Even at that time, my mother-in-law was often doing nothing but relaxing in the living room, watching TV, and enjoying snacks. Although Matt was concerned about his mother's health, she seemed capable of cleaning the room by herself. I had thought she might be too frail to move, but she appeared quite energetic. After I finished cleaning, she said, "Now that you're done, I'm counting on you to prepare dinner. I prefer light seasoning, so no heavy flavors." And as if giving orders, she even asked me to go grocery shopping. Although I thought it was too early to start preparing, I decided to get it over with before returning to my work. Upon returning from shopping, as expected, my mother-in-law was leisurely spending time in the living room. I felt irritated by the sight, but decided to put up with it and just follow her instructions. I told myself that she was probably testing me. I hoped that she would come to appreciate me over time. However, the situation continued for months. Sometimes I was nagged for being 5 minutes late in bringing in the laundry, or for having the bath water 1 inch too high. Before I knew it, I had taken on all the household chores. But my mother-in-law continued to spend her days carefree. Honestly, she seemed to have the energy to do the chores herself. I also knew that if this situation continued, it could negatively affect my work. Wanting to avoid that at all costs, I felt it was time to talk to Matt. So I waited until nightfall. After my mother-in-law went to bed, I confided in Matt about these recent events. "Listen, your mother really doesn't like me. I'm going to be exhausted if this continues." But Matt half laughed and replied, "No way, that can't be. Mom is a kind person. As long as you don't do anything strange, there shouldn't be any problems. I'm counting on you to make the relationship work." He didn't take my concerns seriously, possibly because in front of Matt, his mother always behaved kindly to me, even suggesting I take a break and have some coffee. However, even understanding the reality of the situation, I knew that my patience would reach its limit if this kind of life continued. I was burdened with household chores during the day and had to do my work through the night. Frankly, my trust in Matt was gradually fading. If the situation didn't improve, I might reach my limit and fall ill. It was then that my mother-in-law made an unbelievable proposal. "Kristen, I'll be leaving the house empty for a week during the Easter holiday. I'm counting on you to take care of the household chores while I'm gone." Shocked by this sudden announcement, I asked, "What brought this on all of a sudden?" Matt suggested it. He said we should go on an overseas trip. He's such a good son. He knows how much I love foreign countries. "I can't wait for the Easter holiday in 3 months," she said excitedly. I was dumbfounded. I hadn't heard anything about such plans from Matt. Moreover, I was to be left behind to house sit, all by myself. I realized that I needed to talk to Matt urgently, so once more, I waited until the evening. When I brought it up, Matt said, Mom already told you about it, but aren't you coming with us? We were not on the same page. This meant that my mother-in-law had lied to me. Even though Matt explained things, the thought of going on a trip abroad with my mother-in-law was painful to imagine. I became emotional, wanting him to understand how much I was struggling. I don't want to go. A trip with her would be no fun at all, I strongly exclaimed. However, Matt became angry and retorted fiercely, Kristen, I can't believe you would say something like that. When will you stop acting like a child? I won't allow you to blame my mom. Think about what you've said. I'm looking forward to the trip. I was shocked. He didn't believe a word I had said. Staying in the house had become a painful situation. To make Matt understand that what I was saying was true, I decided to take action the next day. Matt had a day off, and we were having breakfast with the three of us, and I decided to speak directly to my mother-in-law. Mother, is this plan for an overseas trip a way to exclude me? I asked, and she blatantly answered, Humph, I never said that. If you intend to come along, then you should. It would be better, wouldn't it? But Matt intervened, Kristen, you still don't understand the situation? You should apologize to Mom. Why are you so aggressive? You're not a child anymore. Nevertheless, what I had stated was based on facts. At this moment, more than ever, I want to make everything clear and assert myself. I want Matt to understand the truth. But before I could argue further, my mother-in-law hurled the most insulting words at me. But you know what, Kristen? It's better if you stay home. You wouldn't understand the appeal of going abroad without ever having gone to high school. Besides, you just laze around at home without working anyway. You don't deserve to go abroad. You think so too, right? She said. I was astonished. I had no idea that she thought I was unemployed. I explained my job when I met her. I'm sure I talked about what I do for work, didn't I? I counted. Then, with disdain, she said, a job? Teleworking? You must be joking. Just playing around with the computer at home. I've had enough of your idleness. You can't possibly be earning an income that way. You're just living off Matt's salary, aren't you? This made me angry, but before I could respond, my mother-in-law added more. For me, it's enough that Matt is here. He speaks Spanish and works at a top hotel. There's no need for someone like you, without an education or job, to use his income. People at the bottom like you should get out of our house. She was insulting me to her heart's content. Now Matt must have understood what I was talking about. I convinced myself of this and waited for his reaction, but what he said next was even more unexpected. I can see where Mom is coming from. Kristen, you need some time to cool down. As if he was fed up, Matt said that to me. At that moment, my mind was made up. I could no longer stay with them. Even my husband, Matt, sided with his mother and refused to take my side. I was not needed here, and even if I was, I no longer wanted to live with these people. My mother-in-law told me to leave, but I confirmed just to be sure. Are you really okay with me leaving? I asked. Laughing, she replied, of course. Get out of here, you're a nuisance. So I said, understood, and started preparing to move to a new place. I simply nodded to them and left the house. As I did, my mother-in-law mockingly said, enjoy your pole life in a place that suits you. But they did not yet understand the repercussions that might come from this. About 3 months had passed since I left the house, and it was almost Easter holiday. After a long period with no contact, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Kristen, I finally got through to you. What on earth happened? She was clearly flustered. I replied calmly, after saying such things to me. You have the nerve to call? She said, I couldn't reach you at all. I thought you changed your number, so I even contacted your parents' house asking for it. I had already informed my parents beforehand that Matt or my mother-in-law might contact them, and if they did, to give them this number. When I asked, is there some problem? My mother-in-law responded with a shaken voice. Problem? I've got a mountain of bills coming in. Do something. I didn't know anything about this. She was seeking help. I guess you haven't been paying the utility bills, have you? I calmly replied, but she seemed to have even more serious issues. I thought Matt was handling the finances. I had no idea you were paying for everything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. It was too late for her to be upset about it, but apparently, Matt had finally told her the truth. In reality, I had leveraged my experience at a travel agency to start my own business, which had become an international success, now a company exceeding an annual turnover of $10 million. And to my mother-in-law's surprise, there was also a misunderstanding about Matt's income. Despite working at a renowned hotel, it didn't mean he was highly paid. In fact, he was an ordinary employee with an average income. The hotel had many Spanish-speaking staff. Being able to speak Spanish wasn't considered a special talent. It was impossible for his income to support a family of 3. It was a struggle even for him to support himself. Moreover, despite the fact that I was supporting the household, they remained oblivious about it until the notices arrived, which was quite ignorant of them. As I listened to my mother-in-law, an unbelievable truth came to light. The real reason Matt had proposed I live with his mother wasn't to take care of her. In fact, she had been living off the inheritance left by Matt's father, but she had squandered the fortune on a lavish lifestyle, and now her assets were completely gone. In such a state, she had turned to Matt, who she thought was financially stable, for help. However, aware of his modest income and knowing that I was the breadwinner, Matt had ultimately turned to me for assistance. Hearing this story, I realized they were indeed a troubled pair. But the problems didn't end there. Have you taken care of the credit card payments? I asked, to which my mother-in-law suddenly raised her voice. That's what I'm talking about. Both Matt and I have bills piling up. Actually, since I had started living with them, bills from credit card companies had begun arriving in both of their names. The monthly charges continued to rise, and before we knew it, they had ballooned to a significant amount. What luxuries they had indulged in without paying for the living expenses were unclear to me, but Matt's charges were clearly beyond his salary, and my mother-in-law hadn't changed her extravagant ways. Now both were in debt. The total amount exceeded $20,000, which truly shocked me. Even more shocking was that she had said, I thought something like a little debt would be handled by Matt, and Matt also thought, if we were really in trouble, Kristen would sort it out. I could hardly conceal my astonishment. They were both so entitled. It's hard to forgive adults who act so irresponsibly. It's not just appalling. It feels downright dangerous. Yet my mother-in-law had the audacity to say, given the situation, Kristen, you'll find us a solution, right? I refused outright. After the way you treated me, I see no reason to help you now. It seemed Matt was also there, because he suddenly came on the line, insisting, Kristen, you're my wife. It's your duty to take care of us. Find a way to help. We can't make the payments. I had no desire to deal with their shamelessness any longer, but I showed mercy. Will you come to me? If you do, I might be willing to help to some extent. Matt seemed keen on the offer. Yeah, that sounds good. You'll provide a place to live and take care of the money, right? We'll come on over. Where are you now? We'll leave right away. Tell me quickly. Despite his eagerness, I frankly said, of course, if you can make it, that is. I'm in the Bahamas. I have a villa here. Both Matt and my mother-in-law couldn't hide their astonishment. Well, what do you mean? Bahamas. We can't possibly go to such a place right now, he said. The situation was tense, but I remained calm. Is that so? But aren't you planning a trip abroad for the Easter holiday? Why not stop by the Bahamas then? Your mother would be pleased, right? By the way, you got my number from my parents. Didn't you realize it was an international one? I also reminded them. Oh, and don't forget, this call is going to be quite expensive. Long conversations are tough on the wallet. Acting as if I wanted to continue the conversation, I added, "If we get divorced, I might reconsider the financial situation for you." Upon hearing this, Matt replied, "You're right. Okay, let's get divorced." He probably couldn't stand the burden of debt any longer. I informed him that I would come to hand over the divorce papers when I returned to the US and ended the call. About a week later, I returned to the US, had him fill out the divorce papers, and our separation was finalized smoothly. He had become considerably gaunt, apparently living a harsh life over the past few days. Matt confessed that he had expected me to pay for the overseas trip costs. Hearing this no longer surprised me, but it seems that after the divorce, they had assumed that I would pay their debts. Of course, I had no such intention. What I suggested was that they both cut back on their luxuries and work hard. As I advised, that way, they could eventually repay their debts and maintain a basic standard of living. When Matt heard my answer, he protested, "Hey, that's not what you said. You said you'd take care of the debt." I replied with a hint of sarcasm, "I did come up with a plan for you to repay your debts on your own. Just follow my advice, and you'll be fine. Good luck. And when you can afford a vacation abroad, you're welcome to visit my villa in the Bahamas." And with that, I left. Since then, they seem to be working tirelessly from early morning until late at night, living life to the fullest. Perhaps this was a necessary lesson for them. It's a replacement for their previously lazy lives. In the meantime, I heard that my old friend Maya had settled in the Bahamas, meaning that I was able to be reunited with her after such a long time. After graduating from middle school, she found an international job and, like me, had become a company president. She welcomed her parents into her new home and lives happily together with them. Seeing how things worked out for her, I decided to call my own parents from the US to come and live with me. Now I visit Maya from time to time. We encourage each other, feeling fortunate to be able to care for our parents in a wonderful foreign land, and we continue to work hard in our respective businesses. "Hey, after Dad passes away, is it okay if I move back home?" Mysil calmly made this unexpected statement. She had indeed moved back home after her third divorce. She was a troublesome returnee daughter who neither paid for any living expenses nor did any housework. If this situation continues, our position as a couple will be jeopardized. We must take measures. That's when an idea came to me. I, Mina, am 38 years old, running a pastry shop with my husband in a provincial city. The shop has been loved by locals for 40 years and was managed by my father-in-law. We got married when my husband, Duke, was 30 and I was 28. Being a regular at the pastry shop, I was liked by both my husband and my father-in-law. Duke's sister, Betty, moved back home after 2 divorces, but left 2 years ago when she got married for the 3rd time. Her father had strongly opposed this marriage, as it was a scandalous affair that was frowned upon socially. "You stole someone else's husband, so you must stay with him for life. Even if you come back, I won't welcome you home." Though he forgave her, he made it clear that she must take responsibility, and Betty never returned home again. Then, my father-in-law was discovered to be suffering from pancreatic cancer. The disease was quite advanced, and the doctors said he did not have long to live. Understanding the situation, he called his son and his daughter, along with me, his daughter-in-law, to his hospital room. "Duke, I'm leaving the shop to you. You can run it as you wish. Work together with Nina and make it work." My husband nodded repeatedly and, holding his father's hand, replied, "Don't worry, leave it to me. Betty, it's been a long time. I'm sorry for what I said last time. It was almost like disowning you. If you're happy, that's all that matters. Stop by the house sometimes." It seemed that he was still fond of his daughter. She replied with teary eyes, "Understood, Dad." However, as soon as she left the hospital room, she calmly said, "Hey, after Dad passes away, is it okay if I move back home?" "What?" My husband, Duke, and I were shocked, and we couldn't immediately understand the meaning of her words. "Actually, I broke up with him last month. He was having an affair with a woman 10 years younger than him, and I was so angry I got back at him. It was all his fault, but he made such a fuss about it. I couldn't take it anymore. That's how she reported her third divorce. It's hard to pay the rent for my current apartment by myself, so this came at a good time. She seemed to think it was appropriate to move back home now that her father wouldn't be around much longer. I couldn't believe it. Let me know when the time comes. Leaving those words behind, she left the hospital. We were in a daze, unable to find words to respond, and just stood blankly in the hospital corridor for a while. Betty had first married at 25, and she had already left home when I got married into the family. But she returned after divorcing 2 years later. She remarried at 30, but her mother suddenly died of a stroke. And during those difficult times, she quickly filed for marriage and left again. 3 years later, she divorced again. Her third marriage, which started with an affair, ended in just a year. Altogether, her marriages didn't even last 5 years, and honestly, I can't understand her way of thinking. She was a type I had never encountered before, and we could never get along. I hate to say this, but I just can't bring myself to like your sister. When I conveyed this, Duke sighed along, indeed. She's my sister, but I can't bring myself to like her either. She's been self-centered since childhood, and as an adult, she hasn't changed. She grabs whatever she wants by any means necessary and discards it as soon as she's bored. She lacks compassion. Just imagining living together with her again made my spirits sink. My father-in-law passed away 10 days later. He was a beloved local shop owner and a friendly figure who also served as a community leader. So many people attended his funeral. Naturally, Betty was there too, but she didn't help with anything, eating the food as if she were a stranger. The pastry shop established by my father-in-law focused on traditional cakes with a local twist. Delicious but not very popular among younger crowds. My husband, Duke, graduated from a school specialized in pastry and often clashed with his father about wanting to utilize his training in France to develop new products aimed at younger customers. Looking back, though, those were fun times. In our area, a car is essential, and the parking lot at the shop was extensive. Duke's idea was to use a corner of it for an expansion of the shop and to set up an eat-in area. The second floor of the shop served as living space for us, Duke's parents, and occasionally Betty, who returned now and then. On the first anniversary of my father-in-law's passing, only close family gathered on the second floor of the shop. Even on that day, Betty didn't help out and was cheerfully chatting with uncles and cousins. Aunts and cousins who knew her well said her reputation was very low. Regardless of whether they are relatives or not, she's very friendly to men. Everyone agreed. The thought of living with her was daunting, but we hadn't told the relatives about her third divorce or her plans to move back home yet. Nothing was decided, and we wanted to avoid any issues at the first anniversary. However, living together with her started sooner than expected. Betty came for the first anniversary and immediately settled in the family home. The room our parents used is empty, right? I'll be using that one. The moving truck is coming tomorrow, so help me out, she declared. I had never been so surprised. It seemed she had planned to live with us from the start, intending to take over their parents' spacious room instead of her old, smaller one. Although Duke expressed his dissatisfaction, the volume of belongings that arrived the next day wouldn't fit in the small room, and we had no choice but to move them into the larger one. From that day on, she lived a carefree life. She slept until the afternoon, freely took food from the fridge to have lunch, spent the afternoon in her room using her smartphone or watching TV, occasionally went shopping, and bought cosmetics and clothes. Cooking for 2 or 3 doesn't change the effort required. Please prepare my portion too, she said, naturally expecting me to prepare dinner. Duke and I endured the first week, but feeling the need to change the situation, Duke was the first to bring it up. Betty, aren't you going to work? Helping out in our shop would be fine, but if you're going to live here, you need to contribute something. If you don't want to work, do the household chores. She laughed loudly and replied, no way. I want to be exempt from living expenses and household chores. Duke, you received a lot of inheritance, right? The shop is yours, so you should at least cover my living expenses. Her brazenness had its limits. I was beginning to feel that no words would have any effect on her. Duke could only sigh and respond with a resigned, okay. Then one day, Duke came to me somewhat excited. Nina, I got a call from that bar. They're reopening today. Moonlight, it's been over a month, hasn't it? Shall we go tomorrow? Moonlight is a speakeasy-style bar located just a 5-minute walk from our house. It's more of a literal hideaway than just speakeasy style. A small gate features a modestly affixed sign with Moonlight engraved on a 2-inch square metal plate, making it look like just an ordinary house at first glance. The bar has only 7 counter seats, with dim lighting, and while it doesn't offer proper meals, it serves a variety of delicious alcohols, prosciutto, and cheeses. The owner is a man whose age is hard to guess, likely between 25 and 35 years old. He wears slightly tinted round glasses, sports a beard, and has slicked back hair fixed with hair gel, all of which contribute to his humorous and unique ambience. Previously, the bar was managed by an elderly gentleman over 70 with no relatives. But after his death, the current owner took over the management under the condition of handling the transition. This transition occurred about 5 years ago. New customers rarely notice this bar, and it's not a place people just stumble upon, but those in the know keep it bustling with a few regulars during open hours. However, the owner is whimsical. There are no fixed off days or business hours, and he often takes sudden, long vacations, closing the shop for extended periods. When closing for a long time or reopening, notifications are sent via email at the request of regular customers. So, we decided to visit Moonlight for a drink immediately. Hey, long time no see. Where have you been? I was in Bolivia for a bit. South America, right? Yes, it's a country surrounded by the Andes and famous for the Unisalt flats. After a brief chat about Bolivia, the owner asked, "Have you both been well? It seems like you might be a bit stressed." With no other customers around, we inadvertently vented about Betty. That sounds tough. The owner was a good listener and seemed genuinely interested. As the conversation wound down, Duke sighed and said, "I guess the only solution is for her to find a new boyfriend and move out." Huh? But Betty hardly ever goes out, and she's already 35. It's hard to imagine her finding a boyfriend. Even though it felt harsh, I couldn't help but say it out loud. If Nina says that, it must be serious. I might have an idea. As the owner spoke, we leaned in eagerly. What? Do you have a good idea? As the conversation continued, we discussed a proposal from the owner. It seemed Duke was seriously considering taking action against his sister. If Duke agrees, I have no objections. Just as planned, on the next day off for the pastry shop. In the afternoon, the owner visited our home. When we opened the front door, we couldn't believe he was the same person we knew. His previous slicked back hair had changed to a more natural flowing hairstyle. Without glasses and having shaved his beard, he looked quite handsome. I was much younger when I took over the bar, so I was a bit disguised. The owner explained. His tinted glasses turned out to have no prescription. But it's becoming a hassle, and I thought I might stop using the disguise with this opportunity. It's perfect timing. Saying that, he laughed brightly. I thought he was clearly an eccentric character. However, I felt certain that Betty would definitely show interest in him. Yet, despite it being past noon, she still hadn't gotten up. As soon as the owner graciously greeted us with "Thank you for having me today," she appeared. "Oh, do we have a guest? Excuse me for looking like this." She was in very revealing house clothes, arching her back and pushing her chest forward. I really disliked her behavior like this. As I told you yesterday, we have a guest coming over for lunch today. What? Really? She hadn't been listening to my words at all. "May I join you?" she asked the owner in a coquettish manner, which annoyed me. But this was all part of today's plan. She went back to her room, changed her clothes, and came back after meticulously doing her makeup. She still wore a top with a deep neckline, emphasizing her cleavage. I run a bar nearby, but I was overseas for about a month, so I've been missing American home cooking. I heard that Nina was preparing a meal, so I'm sorry for imposing. The owner introduced himself with the clean and youthful demeanor of a young man. I had no idea there was such a bar around here, she expressed surprise, but we had kept it a secret, wanting to protect our couple's hideaway. He requested roast beef, cream stew, and potato salad. I've been craving these. These are truly wonderful. He said this and joyfully ate my cooking. Is this okay? If you have any requests, I can cook anytime. As she said this, I thought it might have been bad to serve such a simple meal, but Duke and I nodded to each other, happy that the first stage of our plan had been successful. From that night on, Betty started frequenting Moonlight regularly. Today, I'm going to the movies with the owner, she'd say cheerily as she headed out. I was worried that the owner might find her bothersome, but he seemed to be enjoying himself. Indeed, he was a bit of an eccentric character. 2 weeks later, we received an email from the owner saying, "I'm going to implement the final phase now." We hurried out of the house and headed to Moonlight. When we entered the bar, there was a man sitting deep behind the counter. He was a gentle person whom we had spoken to several times at this place, and he was nearly 6'5" tall. It was Mr. Rogers, who runs a small construction company. Betty sat down, leaving 2 empty seats between us, and the moment she saw us, she clearly looked annoyed. Probably, Mr. Rogers sitting further down was also an unwelcome presence for her. "Hey, when is our next date?" she asked cheerfully across the counter. "A date? Did I make such a promise?" The owner replied deliberately while placing a drink on a coaster. "Oh, you're terrible," she cooed, almost unbelievably sweet. "I just accompanied you because I didn't want to go to the movie alone. I wanted to see that film too," he responded expressionlessly. Betty was clearly shocked by his response. "That's cruel. We're dating, aren't we?" she exclaimed, typical of her. She often seemed to think that everyone adored her. That's troubling. You thought that? You remind me of my mother, so I kind of went along with it out of a sense of gratitude toward her." "Something like that?" the owner replied. Duke and I had a hard time holding back our laughter. "Come on, that's not possible. How old do you think I am? It's impossible for me to have such a grown-up son." After taking this significant blow, the owner delivered another strike. "However, you are over 50, right? Since I'm 28, a parent-child relationship seems more natural than that of lovers." The owner was clearly jesting, fully aware of her real age, which we had communicated to him. "I'm only 35 years old. Why would you think I could be your mother?" She seemed genuinely upset, but then she quickly moved next to Mr. Rogers, asking in a coquettish voice, "Do I really look that old?" Confirming target change. The owner said quietly. Duke gave a small fist pump and responded with, "Understood," while I struggled to contain my laughter. Mr. Rogers earnestly replied to her, "No, you look young. I have seen you here a few times and always thought you were beautiful," which pleased her. "You seem very reliable. I like men like you." Betty said this and pressed her ample chest against Mr. Rogers' strong arms. Mr. Rogers also replied, "I also prefer women like you," as he wrapped his arm around her waist. After a slightly uncomfortable scene unfolded, the two left the bar closely together. Betty did not return home that night. When she returned the next morning, she said, "I couldn't sleep all night. I'm so tired, haha," and shamelessly continued her words before disappearing into her room. Afterwards, she began to spend many nights out, and a month later, she hardly returned home at all. It was safe to say the plan had worked brilliantly. We met with the owner at Moonlight to discuss how things had unfolded. But Mr. Rogers seems like a nice guy, and I kind of feel bad. "Are you sure it's okay?" I was feeling a bit guilty, as if we had pushed her onto Mr. Rogers. "No worries. We chose carefully. Mr. Rogers is so passionate that his previous wife ran away, so he should get along well with her." "I see. Duke listened to the conversation and smirked wryly. While I was glad Betty had moved out, I was also enviously reflecting on their budding relationship, leaving me with mixed feelings. Sensing this, the owner gently spoke up. Mr. Rogers is truly a wonderful person, but he does have some issues. The owner's words were laden with meaning. One day, Betty, buoyant in her steps, announced, "I've really enjoyed the hospitality. As soon as the legal remarriage waiting period is over, I plan to get married right away. So, goodbye." And she started to leave the room. Duke stopped her with a warning. He can be very jealous, you know. He's always had a fierce temper whenever he sees a woman being friendly with another man, far more intense than you'd expect from his size. Even a light touch can turn into a big problem, so be careful. Really? I didn't know that. Her complexion changed instantly. However, as long as you don't cheat on him, he's really kind, so you don't need to worry. I spoke with a calm smile, but the owner had mentioned that Mr. Rogers' possessiveness was quite severe. I couldn't imagine how long she, who loves her freedom, could tolerate such strictness. Still, that was strictly their personal issue to handle. I also have some happy news to share. After years of fertility treatments, I've finally conceived and am now in a stable period. Next spring, I'll be having twins. I revealed it with a mix of irony and excitement. At my comment, her eyes widened in disbelief. Yes, that's right. So even if you come back, there won't be a place for you here anymore, Duke told her calmly, and her expression drastically changed, visibly shaken. You really don't need to worry. Mr. Rogers has promised that he won't let you come back here again. Duke added, trying to reassure her, but there was one important fact we hadn't yet disclosed. It concerned Mr. Rogers' mother. Her potential mother-in-law is known for her strict personality. We kept this fact a secret because revealing it might lead her to reconsider the marriage altogether. However, further conversations with the owner revealed that the relationship between Betty and her mother-in-law was indeed not going well. I don't want to live with my mother-in-law anymore, she complained and added, I want to live just by ourselves. But Mr. Rogers isn't listening to her pleas. But I tried to meet your demands at night, so there should be no problem, he said with a laugh. Hearing this, I felt a chill somewhere deep inside. People are diverse, and so are the dynamics of each couple's relationship. Despite the deep concerns about whether their marriage would truly work out, this resolution promised to finally free us from being troubled by her presence. What lies ahead for us is the new challenge of raising the twins soon to arrive. This challenge will undoubtedly bring many difficulties, but my husband and I are filled with hope for the future. After the birth, I'll need to focus on breastfeeding for a while, so I'll have to avoid alcohol, I mentioned, contemplating the future during a visit to Moonlight. When I spoke regretfully about it, the owner of the bar reassured us. Don't worry, I have a variety of delicious non-alcoholic cocktails prepared, so I look forward to welcoming you here anytime. Also, if there's anything else I can help with, please let me know, he said, and together we raised a toast. Let's give it our all for our children to come, my husband declared with a new resolution. He then began to reveal recipes he had kept secret out of deference to his father, and embarked on developing a new menu. Some of the dishes he created were particularly appealing to the younger crowd, both in taste and appearance, making for stylish and photogenic cakes that did well on social media. They quickly became popular items, drawing long lines of people eager to purchase them. The owner of Moonlight also showed interest in trying out these cakes at his bar and made a special request for a cake infused with enough alcohol to get tipsy from eating it, truly highlighting his unconventional nature. Even if there was a possibility that my sister-in-law might return, my husband and I vowed to firmly refuse her re-entry because we now have a new family to protect and cherish. My name is Stacy. I used to live with my parents, brother, and his wife at our family home. But a few months ago, my parents died in an accident. It's been quite busy ever since, but recently the situation has calmed down. I currently live with my brother and his wife Vanessa. She has a quite distinctive personality. I work from home, and except for necessary meetings outside, I am almost always at home. As a result, my sister-in-law considers me unemployed and often makes sarcastic remarks. Stacy, shall I help you find a job? You need to work hard. You can't live here forever. You know, I am working, right? Drying at home and playing around is not what I call work. How about a nighttime job like mine? It pays well. Since you were a shut-in and not good with customer service, maybe you'd prefer working in the kitchen? The truth is, I work as an illustrator from home, but my sister-in-law perceives it as me just staying home and playing. Vanessa's family runs a fishing business and she has always helped out, so she values active jobs. Some people work physically while others work using computers. She doesn't seem to understand this difference, so she tends to view me as not working because I don't go out. When my parents were alive, they used to explain my job to Vanessa, but after she complained to my brother, he also started to be strict with me along with her. One day, after Vanessa returned from her part-time job, during dinner, my brother said, "Vanessa says that you aren't actually working and just playing around on the computer all day. Vanessa continues to work even after getting married, but you, on the contrary, despite not being married, are taking it easy. Are you sure you're fine with that?" My brother actually understands my profession. Yet, he sides with Vanessa and has started to criticize me for being lazy. What are you talking about? Why do I have to be told such things? When I argued back and returned to my room, my brother followed and said, "The conversation isn't over. Vanessa is angry because she thinks our financial burden is increasing because you're not working. You know we're saving money, right?" I understand that my brother and his wife are living at our family home to save money for economic reasons. It seems Vanessa consulted with my parents, and that's how we started to live together. I heard my brother say he wanted to save as much money as possible before having children. After our parents died, I intended to ask my brother and his wife to leave the house, but my brother promised to reconsider his actions and asked to continue living together, so I agreed. Although my brother's behavior hasn't changed much, I thought it would be bearable for a while. Our house was newly built a few years ago and is quite comfortable, but it was costly. Since my parents did not have a group credit life insurance, the mortgage remained. I have taken on the mortgage payments, which are a significant burden to me, but I was planning to share the payments if we were to continue living together. However, dividing the mortgage in half would slow down my brother and his wife's savings, so I continue to pay it all by myself. I understand that. But what does my being here have to do with your inability to save money? Well, Vanessa said that. She said our food and electricity bills increase because you're here. I actually pay Vanessa my part of the living expenses. In fact, I buy my meals and do my laundry myself. It seemed that my brother did not fully understand what I was saying. Wait, Vanessa said she wasn't getting any financial help from you. But if you are making payments, why are our savings increasing? I don't know. You should ask Vanessa about that directly. There seemed to be things about their financial situation that my brother didn't understand, but I had no say in that. After hearing my words, my brother seemed to go and ask his wife about the money matters. Hey, don't make unnecessary comments when you're unemployed, okay? Yesterday, Ben asked me about the savings, and he also asked whether you were giving me money. Just because you're helping out a little doesn't mean you're paying for living expenses. So don't say that, okay? I haven't said anything, but it's true that I'm paying you. Why would I have to hide that from Ben? Be quiet. Ben said you told him to ask me about the savings. I managed to dodge the question, but from now on, don't talk to Ben about money matters. Why don't you mind your own business instead of other people's? With that, Vanessa left for her part-time job. I had been thinking about why Vanessa didn't want to talk about money with me, but until then, I hadn't paid much attention to it. However, from that day on, I started to feel something was off with her behavior. Especially when it came to money, she became more nervous, increased her sarcastic remarks towards me, and started to push me to move out. Hey, since you're unemployed, you don't have the funds to move out, right? How about becoming independent soon? It's your fault our financial situation is tight. I don't plan to move out, but why is that my responsibility? I'm paying you my part of the living expenses. What? You still don't understand why you have to leave? That's why you're called an ignorant bum. Up until now, Ben and I have been lenient, but we've reached our limit. You have to leave within 3 months. After saying that, Vanessa returned to her room in a huff. Hearing Vanessa's words gave me the impression that Ben had taken over the house. I wondered if Vanessa knew that I had inherited the house and decided to confirm with Ben. Hey, Vanessa knows this house is mine, right? For some reason, she's telling me to leave. Yeah, we discussed that. Vanessa really likes this house. It's big enough even if we have children, and it's a nice house. So, like Vanessa suggested, if you're willing to leave, we can continue living here. If that's what you guys want, I'll comply. But the house is in my name, so if you're going to take it over, I want you to buy it officially. Also, would you be able to continue paying the mortgage? After thinking it over, Ben replied, yeah, that's impossible. We need to save up money quickly and get our own place. I was actually shocked when I asked Vanessa about our savings before, and there wasn't much. She said she was saving, but I couldn't believe it. When I checked the account, there was indeed very little, and I wondered if there was another account where she was saving. Despite me bearing the full cost of the house's mortgage and maintenance, my brother and his wife's savings were not increasing. Their only expenses are their own meals. Considering Vanessa's past actions, I suspected that she might be spending money without Ben's knowledge. This could be why their savings aren't growing. But I was upset that Vanessa was blaming me for the lack of savings, so I decided to uncover her secret. First, I observed Vanessa's clothing, but there were no signs of expensive brand items, so shopping didn't seem to be the cause. I thought about Vanessa's behavior from various angles, but couldn't find an obvious reason. After several days passed without finding any particular clue, one night, I was at a cafe for a work-related meeting. I witnessed a woman who looked very much like Vanessa walking with a flashy man outside the window. When I secretly followed them, they entered a high-end store that looked like a nightclub. The next day, after my brother went to work, I decided to ask Vanessa about it. Last night, I thought I saw you near the station. Weren't you with a man? Vanessa, slightly disturbed by my question, replied, You sure you didn't mistake me for someone else? I was working yesterday and hurriedly left the scene. I thought I might have mistaken her with someone else, but I was sure it was her because she had the same bag. Since I had another meeting that night at the same cafe, I was able to spot a woman who looked like Vanessa walking hand in hand with the flashy man at the same time as the previous day. I gathered my courage and decided to approach Vanessa. Vanessa, weren't you supposed to be at work today? Vanessa, noticing me, quickly withdrew her hand and said, Oh, Stacy, I just came to have a meal with a friend today. The man, unconcerned with Vanessa's reaction, handed me his business card and said, I'm Justin. Please come and visit our club. While I gave a vague response and took his card, I looked at Vanessa. Vanessa, looking pale, told the man, We're going home now. Really? But you said you'd order champagne today. The man said, I'll be going home now. With that, Vanessa left me behind and hurried away. It became clear from the man's words that she was spending a significant amount at the nightclub, and yet she had been complaining to my brother that I was hindering their savings. So I decided to tell him everything and hurried home, resolved to have Vanessa leave the house. When I arrived, only Vanessa was there, and upon seeing me, she started to yell at me. If you tell Ben about this, I won't overlook it. You get to stay in this house because of us. We're supporting an unemployed person like you. I hadn't expected my brother to be absent, but it was a good time to confront her since I had things to ask. Vanessa still labeled me as unemployed and insisted I was living off them, so I boldly asked her, Vanessa, do you by any chance think this house belongs to my brother? What are you talking about? Ben inherited it from your parents, so of course, this house is his. Do you think you have the right to live here as a family member? Vanessa countered my statement, showing no belief in my words. This made me feel that Vanessa still didn't understand that I had inherited the house. This house was actually passed down to me from our parents. Since there was remaining mortgage debt, and my brother's income alone was not enough to repay it, I took it over. That can't be. We aren't repaying any mortgage. I have taken over the mortgage and am paying it in full. Moreover, I am also covering the necessary expenses for maintaining the house. Vanessa doubted my words, starting to accuse me of being a liar. While we were arguing, my brother returned from work. "Is there a problem?" I could hear voices from the entrance, and the neighbors were concerned. With my brother's arrival, Vanessa seemed to feel she had gained support and confidently said to me, "Ben, explain. This house was inherited by you, and Stacy, who is unemployed, should leave." My brother grasped the situation and spoke to Vanessa. "Don't you remember? We couldn't continue to pay the mortgage and live off our income alone, so it was decided that Stacy would take over the house. Have you forgotten a promise we made to live here until we're financially stable?" I don't remember any promises like that. Despite my brother's explanation, Vanessa continued to claim she didn't remember. My patience reached its limit, and while showing her the property register, I confronted Vanessa. "Please look at this. My name is listed as the owner, isn't it? Vanessa, the only thing you are allowed to do is to live here. Why do you think you have the right to kick me out?" No, I genuinely didn't know. If you had shown me the property register from the start, I won't say things like that anymore. I'd be at a loss if I were driven out now. Vanessa tried to salvage the situation, but I didn't listen to her and continued. "You've been going to nightclubs and running out of money, right? Are you using the living expenses I provided for the nightclub? Even yesterday, you were about to order champagne. If you continue to live like this, you won't be able to save up money." I vented all my frustrations at Vanessa. Vanessa glared at me, looking like she might pounce at any moment. But my brother grabbed her and started to question her. "What did my sister mean when she said you've been going to nightclubs? Is that why we haven't been able to save up any money? You were supposed to be at your part-time job yesterday." No. My brother had assumed Vanessa was going out at night for her part-time job and was shocked to learn she had actually been going to a nightclub. The shock my brother must have felt must have been even greater than mine when I accidentally discovered her secret. Confused by my brother's reaction, Vanessa boldly retorted, "I was just relieving stress at the nightclub. It's not like I was cheating or doing anything wrong, right?" While going to a nightclub might not be considered cheating, I had witnessed Vanessa going out with a host twice, feeling her spending was adversely affecting our household. I had been patient with this short-term situation, but given Vanessa's management of finances, it seemed unlikely they would leave this house on their own. I therefore decided to stop holding back and resolved to have my brother and his wife move out. If Vanessa had to rent an apartment by herself, she might start thinking more seriously about her spending. "Vanessa, you and Ben should move out of this house. It's because you've been living here without much financial burden that you've been able to afford expenses like things like going to the nightclub. You should find a new place within a month. Moving will cost money, but you surely have some savings." I expected my brother to agree with this proposal, but he made an unexpected statement. "I agree that we should leave this house. However, Vanessa and I will live separately. I no longer want her managing my salary, and I don't need a wife who meets other men. Stacy, I'm sorry for the trouble we've caused. We won't wait a month. We'll leave this house immediately." My brother's statement clearly indicated he was considering distancing himself from Vanessa. Realizing this, Vanessa panicked and appealed, "Wait, are we getting a divorce? It's impossible to move out so soon." But my brother did not side with her like he had before. Despite her surprise, Vanessa showed resignation. "Then, wait until my next payday. I only have a few $100s now, and I can't go anywhere." How surprising that you only have a few $100s left 2 days after payday. How much did you spend in such a short time? My brother was appalled by Vanessa's statement and seemed at a loss for words. "I spent it on the nightclub payments. Oh, and I don't mind getting a divorce before payday. If we get a divorce, there will be distribution of property. right? Ben, how much did you inherit? Vanessa seemed unaware that the inheritance was not subject to distribution of property. My brother interrupted as I was about to explain. It was a considerable amount. But first, let's file for divorce tomorrow, and then we can discuss. Believing the inheritance would be divided, Vanessa was busy preparing to move away with joy. The next day, my brother and Vanessa submitted the divorce papers, and Vanessa quickly decided on a new place to live. The initial costs were partly covered by my brother's savings. Vanessa had the moving preparations and contractors arranged within a few days, and the loading had begun. When the distribution of property came up, my brother clarified the inheritance is not subject to division. Our joint savings and Vanessa's moving expenses are what you'll be getting. Vanessa's face changed rapidly from cheerful to furious, and she confronted my brother. That's not what you said. I rented that expensive apartment thinking I'd get a large sum. Plus, I've already told Justin I'd go to the club tonight because I thought I'd have a lot of money. Vanessa still intended to go to the nightclub. In response, my brother coldly replied, I did mention the amount of the inheritance, but I never said it would go to you. Seems like the movers have finished their job, so you should go to your new place quickly. Vanessa was making a scene, but neither my brother nor I were swayed, and we made her leave the house. When she continued to cause a commotion outside, I told her we would call the police, and she finally quieted down and left with the movers for her new place. After calming down, I proposed to my brother, who was preparing to move. I plan to sell this house. If you don't mind, you can stay here until I find a buyer. You'll need moving funds, right? I need to find a new place too. Tears filled my brother's eyes as he expressed his gratitude. 2 months later, we found a buyer for the house, and we each moved to new places. The house sold for more than the remaining mortgage, so I used the funds to buy a small condominium. The new place is far from the old one but close to a station, and I like it. On the other hand, Vanessa was evicted for failing to pay her rent after moving and incurred debt due to continued expenses at the nightclub. I don't know where she is living now. My brother is a bit worried about Vanessa and is willing to help if she reaches out, but there has been no contact so far. My brother and I occasionally keep in touch and deepen our relationship by visiting our parents' graves together. I hope to continue visiting our parents' graves with my brother. Ideally, I'd love to someday report my marriage at our parents' grave, but that will have to wait. My name is Jane. I am currently fulfilling my role as a professional while simultaneously raising my beloved only son, Paul. I have a long history of work experience and never intended to give up my career, even after getting married. Especially in my small but independent company, I have never faced a situation where my salary was reduced even after returning to work post-childbirth. During the leave I took for my son's childcare, I entrusted the management of the company to someone I trust, so I never worried about the management or progress of the business. However, the only issue that troubles me amidst my peaceful days is entirely different. It involves the presence of my mother-in-law. My husband Danny, our son Paul, and I lived together in a comfortable house. But soon after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law suddenly imposed herself into our home. I assumed she would return to her own home after a short stay, but she chose to continue living with us without showing any intention to leave. When I gently inquired, "How long do you plan to stay with us?" her reaction was unexpected. She became emotional and exclaimed, "How could a heartless daughter-in-law attempt to drive out an old woman like me? After losing my beloved husband, being forced to live alone in my hometown is incredibly cruel." Danny, who had overheard part of the conversation, rushed to her side and comforted her. "Mom, it's okay. I would never kick you out, so please don't cry." After she calmed down, Danny took her to a different room. Once we were alone, he looked at me sharply and accused, "How can you say such horrible things to my mother? Do you not have a heart?" Misunderstandings might have arisen because Danny did not hear the whole conversation, but I had not forbidden my mother-in-law from living with us. As I explained, I was just asking how long you plan to stay, not that I wanted her to leave, he retorted. Asking about the stay sounds like you want her to leave early. Can't you understand other people's feelings? I regret using inappropriate words, but I never intended to drive her out. However, Danny, taking my mother-in-law's excessive reaction at face value, seemed to have decided I was in the wrong. I had no choice but to leave the situation as it was, making my daily life's small troubles deepen due to complex family relationships and the nuances of emotions involved. As a business owner, mother, and wife, I juggle these roles daily, trying to balance each. I wonder how long my mother-in-law plans to stay in our home. Asking her directly would likely result in her accusingly crying and appealing to Danny, so I hesitate to ask directly. Yet, when I contemplated how long she might stay, she unexpectedly announced, "I've sold my old house, so I'm moving all my belongings here," in front of the moving company truck parked outside our home, leaving me speechless. It was my day off, and I had planned to take Paul to the amusement park. However, Danny approached my mother-in-law, suggesting, "Then, today will be for sorting things out." This visit to the amusement park was a promise made long ago, eagerly anticipated by Paul, who looked disappointed when he asked, "Mom, what about the amusement park?" "Don't worry, Paul. As promised, we're going to the amusement park," I reassured him. Danny frowned and showed his dissatisfaction, asking, "Are you planning to leave the luggage unattended just for going to the amusement park?" I confidently argued, "Why should we change our plan for a family visit to the amusement park, breaking a promise to our child for sorting luggage?" I find such behavior unacceptable. The visit to the amusement park had been planned weeks in advance, with all preparations made for that day. Yet, I was not informed about the move, and when told today was the day for unpacking, I prioritized the plans already set. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law began to cry exaggeratedly, claiming Jane finds living with me uncomfortable. That's why she prioritizes her child over me. Hearing this, the movers, either feeling the situation was deadlocked or tired of my mother-in-law's exaggerated performance, quietly pointed out, "Unpacking can wait. Shouldn't promises to children take priority? And did you properly inform your wife about the move?" Upon hearing the calm comment, my mother-in-law blushed and felt ashamed. Danny, witnessing this development, did not defend her but merely looked at me intently. It appeared that Danny prioritized helping his mother with the move over our planned enjoyable family visit to the amusement park. In light of this situation, I decided to take my son, Paul, to the amusement park as previously planned. Unfortunately, this choice created a noticeable distance between my husband and me. One day, my mother-in-law said to me, "Jane, would you mind staying at home on your next day off?" I asked her why. "The truth is, I want to spend time with Paul, but since you always monopolize him, I hardly get the chance to play with him," she complained. This request came about a week after she had moved into our house without permission. She probably overheard my plans to take Paul to the shopping mall on my next day off. Suddenly, she forbade me from visiting the shopping mall, asserting, "Danny, Paul, and I will go to the shopping mall, so you should stay at home." Normally, there would be an option for the whole family to go out together, but excluding me seemed very selfish. Having witnessed her previous fake crying and such behavior, I could no longer trust her words. Therefore, considering it unthinkable to leave my child with someone I couldn't trust, I suggested, "Why don't we all go out together?" Although she looked displeased, she could not directly accuse me of being mean and reluctantly agreed. At the shopping mall, I began selecting clothes for Paul as originally planned, choosing slightly larger sizes considering children's rapid growth. My mother-in-law interrupted, "Why can't you choose the right size? This is the perfect size for Paul, bringing a size that fits him right now." Even when I explained, "Children grow fast," she argued, "when he grows, we can just buy new clothes. There's no need to save so much." I was dumbfounded by her short-sightedness. Selecting perfectly fitting clothes and buying new ones every time they become small is clearly a waste of money. We didn't have the financial leeway to spend money in such a way at our house. When I hesitated to purchase, Danny appeared and pointed out, "I support the family financially. If you try to save, it makes me look stingy to others." Eventually, Danny covered the shopping expenses for my mother-in-law. Paul wore his new clothes comfortably for a while but soon complained, "These clothes are too tight now," and stopped wearing the clothes chosen by my mother-in-law. She seemed to have mixed feelings about this change. Out of necessity, I passed the outgrown clothes to a colleague's mother I had befriended at the daycare. This act was well received, making me feel happy. However, the existence of the daycare seemed undesirable to my mother-in-law. "Why do you need to leave Paul with others when I'm here? Moreover, continuing to work with a child is not good for their education," she criticized. I couldn't agree with this point, responding, "The reality is, we can't make ends meet without my job," but she just snorted, "How much do you even earn?" I'm confident Danny's earnings surpass that. "We can manage without your help. Besides, you're probably a burden at work anyway." It seemed possible that Danny hadn't told his mother about my role as a business owner. His occasional bragging nature might have led him to hide such an important fact, perhaps to avoid letting his mother know that his wife earns more than he does. Faced with such a situation, I was deeply disappointed. "Actually, I earn more than Danny," I explained calmly yet firmly. My mother-in-law's response turned to anger. "How can you say such a thing? Looking down on your own husband and boldly declaring you earn more. Do you not respect your husband? You neglect your duties at home and boast about out-earning him. Don't you have any respect for him? Danny can manage perfectly fine without you," she exclaimed furiously. As her anger reached its peak and her voice echoed throughout the room, Danny appeared, asking, "What's going on here?" As if she had found reinforcements, my mother-in-law spoke with renewed vigor. "Hey, Danny. Actually, we wouldn't be troubled without Jane, right? It should just be you, me, and Paul living happily together. Don't you think our life is being constrained because Jane is here?" She said. "What? Yeah," Danny hesitantly but eventually showed his agreement. "Then the best thing to do is to divorce," she continued, and shockingly, she immediately took out a divorce form. It seemed she had wanted our divorce for some time. I no longer had any expectations for a father who prioritizes his mother over his child. However, I had no intention of giving up custody of my child. "It seems my presence is entirely unwelcome. If you wish for a family of 3, then I shall leave this house," I responded calmly. And without hesitation, I signed the divorce form she proposed. Despite forcing me to cancel our amusement park plans and insisting on helping with the packing, as soon as I started preparing to move out, she took Danny on a trip. Though she invited Paul to a trip, he had seen her unpleasant behavior towards me and still resented her for nearly causing us to miss our amusement park trip. He chose to stay with me, declining her invitation. Thus, Danny and she ended up going on a trip alone. I took this opportunity to move mine and Paul's belongings to a new home. I also left a letter stating that the responsibility for future rent payments, custody, and property division would be Danny's, as outlined through a lawyer. Returning from a week-long trip, Danny and his mother, unaware of the situation, contacted me surprisingly quickly. "Jane, why did you take Paul with you? Mom is worried. I'm supposed to have custody, aren't I?" he accused. It became clear at that moment that Danny had not yet read the letter I left. "Please read the letter on the living room table," I said. Danny replied, "Oh, Mom said she would look at it first. I've outlined that you'll be taking on $4,000 rent responsibility, that I will not transfer Paul's custody, and that we'll discuss property division through a lawyer," I explained. "Rent is $4,000, he exclaimed in surprise. He knew the housing was rented and that I had been making the payments, but he was unaware of the specific amount. I couldn't believe he was unaware of the rent amount while managing our finances. Indeed, this house was a rental, costing a hefty $4,000 monthly, and initially, I was against living here. However, Danny was adamant about living in this house, and eventually, we rented it according to his wishes. As a president, you should have no problem with this level of rent, right? He said, leaving the burden to me. As a result, I ended up paying $4,000 rent monthly, with Danny covering other living expenses. However, he was careless with money and prone to spending impulsively. There was an instance at the shopping mall where, after shopping without calculating, my mother-in-law ended up short at the register and reluctantly called me for help. It seems this mother and son lack financial management skills, often spending on personal luxuries before covering living expenses. I had to cover the shortfall each time. I had savings for Paul's future and was putting my entire salary into our household, leaving me with very little personal spending money. Recently, I also had to cover the expenses and pocket money for his mother, putting us in a financially tight situation. But with the divorce finalized, I am relieved from the burden of $4,000 monthly rent. Registering the house under his name, which was done for his vanity, turned out to be fortunate. This allows me to withdraw from the financial carelessness of the two, bringing significant mental relief. There's no way I can pay that amount. You've always been paying, continue doing so, he pleaded. Why should I pay the rent for a house I no longer live in? I was driven out by your mother. The divorce is finalized, and there's no longer any connection between me and that house. Therefore, I have no obligation to pay the rent, I counted. So, please help me, Danny begged pathetically, but then it seemed his mother grabbed his phone, and her voice came through. We can pay the rent without you. Even the amount you claim to have been paying is manageable for Danny, she asserted. With a take-home pay of only $2,000, how do you plan to pay the monthly rent of $4,000? Are you going to use magic? That would be remarkable, I said sarcastically. What? Came the reply. It seemed that my mother-in-law genuinely misunderstood Danny to be financially well off, probably because she saw him paying during their shopping trips, leading her to believe he was wealthy. I was just dumbfounded by this fact. I thought it was impossible for Danny, with his take-home pay of $2,000 and almost no savings, to afford the rent. Moreover, expecting them to raise a child healthily in their financially unstable situation would be difficult. Even without Paul's consent, custody would naturally fall to me, as Danny and my mother-in-law couldn't provide a suitable environment for raising a child. So, what should we do then? They were bewildered. If you can't pay the rent, you have no choice but to change your living situation. You'll have to notify the real estate agent to cancel your lease. The longer you delay, the more you low in rent, I urged them to act swiftly. My words were met with, "Shut up. I know that much," from my mother-in-law, who clearly had no room for fake tears in this situation. After hanging up, I completed the move to a new apartment with Paul. This apartment is close to my workplace and conveniently located near shops and medical facilities. About a month after the divorce, my mother-in-law and Danny showed up at my company. They began loudly demanding to see me at the entrance, as reported by the receptionist. I was out having lunch with Paul at the time but hurried back with him upon hearing they were causing a commotion. Fortunately, there's a daycare within the company, so I could bring Paul inside. Seeing my mother-in-law and Danny waiting at the reception was a surprise. I was puzzled by their visit since the lawyer had reported they hadn't responded to our discussions. "Jane, can't you just come back home? We understand you were making the payments. Please stop being stubborn," my mother-in-law pleaded with tears, thinking her act would work on someone other than her son. She clearly intended to paint me as the villain. Witnessing her behavior, Danny joined in. "What do you mean by getting a lawyer involved? This is a family matter. Surely, Paul would prefer his parents to be together. However, a father who chooses his mother over his son would only sadden the child. I sighed and replied, now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, please communicate through my legal representative for anything. Danny, realizing he wouldn't get through to me directly, turned to Paul with my mother-in-law. Hey, Paul, you want to be with your dad and grandma, right? Aren't you lonely when your mom is always busy with work? Frightened by their words, Paul hid behind me and cried out loudly, I hate you both because you're mean. His crying had a more significant impact on the people around than my mother-in-law's fake tears. Soon after, other employees came and escorted Danny and my mother-in-law outside, to my relief. Later, after notifying them through the lawyer that any further company visits or following us would be reported to the police, they quieted down. Subsequently, Danny and my mother-in-law abandoned their $4,000 a month housing for a dilapidated apartment. Danny's fate took a darker turn as he had previously bragged about living in a luxurious home beyond our means at his workplace. Fearing the revelation of their move to a rundown apartment, he quit his job without consulting his mother, leading to her fury upon discovering his sudden job resignation. As a result, they started working to earn an income, frequently blaming each other for abandoning me and Paul, resulting in constant arguments. Despite this, they are trying to make ends meet, sending child support monthly while working hard. Meanwhile, my business is thriving, and despite the absence of his father, Paul is growing up to be a well-rounded boy. Even without an unfit father, I am determined to raise him well. Living so boldly as a freeloader is a bit audacious, don't you think? Huh? What are you saying, Patty? Even though you have your own child, you being a freeloader is a nuisance. Freeloaders should sleep in the hallway. For her, it was probably just a small prank. But for me, there couldn't have been anything more convenient. I questioned my sneering sister-in-law. Do you think I'm a bother, Patty? Yes, because you are an outsider. Since I've returned to this home, I don't want to see the face of someone freeloading. Is that so? I understood. Immediately, I gathered my belongings, grabbed my large travel bag, and informed my in-laws. In that case, I will also return to my parents' home. The expression on my in-laws' faces at that moment is something I will never forget. Suppressing laughter, I left. I am Ashley Stewart, 28 years old. After graduating high school, I pursued a design school and later started working in the advertising industry. While working, I also received requests to draw illustrations on social media and became somewhat known in the industry. During my student years, I published illustrations on social media that received a wide range of feedback, leading to a rapid increase in my followers. As a result, I started receiving paid requests and now have the freedom to choose a certain number of requests to undertake every month. The company I work for respects my personal activities and allows me to prioritize them. I got married about half a year ago, and I met my husband, Kevin, at a party. I met him at the party I attended on a whim, and it led to marriage, proving life is unpredictable. After all, I wasn't keen on attending parties in general. Kevin works for a trading company, and while his income is stable, the only downside is his frequent business trips. His job as a businessman requires him to travel to various places frequently. Concerned about me being alone at home due to his trips, he made a suggestion when we decided to marry. Hey Ashley, if you're okay with it, why don't we live together at my parents' home? Do you mean living together with your parents? Yes. I'm worried about you being alone while I'm on business trips. I'll be fine. I've been on my own all this time. But you mentioned before that you were troubled by a stalker, right? It's good that the perpetrator was arrested, but I want to avoid a similar situation. Kevin, indeed, during our relationship, I suffered from persistent stalking. It made me afraid to go out for a while, and I still feel anxious being alone. Living with my in-laws was a big step, but considering safety, it might be the best choice. Not wanting to worry Kevin further, I asked him an important question. If we were to live together, would your family accept me? It's okay. They were all happy when we announced our marriage. Really? Your parents did seem happy, but, right? So, it's no problem. If anything happened to you, both my father and mother would be worried. Is that so? Of course. If you're not against it, I'd really like us to live together at my home. If he's this worried, I don't want to make him feel anxious anymore. I made up my mind and told him, I understand. I'll marry you and live at your home. Really? Yes, so you don't have to worry anymore. Thank you. Ashley, I really appreciate it. Thus, marriage became the reason for us to start living with Kevin's parents. This would save us some money, and most importantly, it would spare my husband additional worry. We decided to contribute to the household expenses in exchange for the accommodation. However, about 2 weeks after the marriage, I realized that this decision was a mistake. That day was the first day my husband, Kevin, was going on a business trip, and he wouldn't be back for 3 days. While feeling worried, I saw him off with a smile alongside my mother-in-law. Then, my anxiety soon became a reality. Let's get started, she said as soon as Kevin disappeared from view. She forcefully pulled my arm and took me to the living room. Mother, my arm hurts. Be quiet and follow me. Mother. Her expression changed drastically, showing a face of anger I had never seen before. Upon arriving in the living room, she handed me various cleaning supplies, including a vacuum cleaner and rags. What is all this for? I exclaimed. She scoffed and said, From today, you are the maid of this house. If you don't want to leave, start cleaning right away. Huh? Mother. Don't call me mother. I really can't stand women who prettify themselves like you do. But I didn't mean to. Stop joking around. You made a fuss about being stalked or whatever, but it's really an exaggeration, isn't it? You're just lying to get Kevin's attention, right? That's not true at all. When I encountered the stalker, it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. Yet, being accused of exaggerating made me angry. However, since it was only 2 weeks since we started living together, showing my emotions so early could negatively affect our future life of living together. Not only me, but it could also trouble my husband. Therefore, I couldn't confront my mother-in-law with the truth. As instructed, I began cleaning the room. My mother-in-law constantly criticized every move I made, causing the work to progress slowly. When I encountered my father-in-law in the hallway, he simply smirked at me. This must be a form of bullying accepted by him towards a daughter-in-law. During the 3 days Kevin was away, my in-laws relentlessly imposed household chores on me. 6 months into our marriage, being bullied by my in-laws in Kevin's absence had become routine. Not only was I burdened with all the household tasks, but I was also demanded pocket money and forced to pay unreasonably. Meals I prepared were thrown on the floor as disgusting, and my favorite bag was intentionally spilled with alcohol. Kevin's business trips varied, lasting 3 days or a week. Every time a trip was scheduled, my heart endured pain. In retrospect, I should have spoken to my husband at the beginning and chosen to live separately. However, I couldn't betray his thoughtful suggestion to live together. The situation continued to worsen. That day, my husband was headed for a week-long business trip. As expected, I endured severe bullying from my in-laws from the first day. Then, in the afternoon, the intercom rang, and an unexpected visitor arrived. I'm home. There's nothing like being at home. It was Kevin's sister, Patty, her husband, and their 5 children. Altogether, 7 people suddenly visited, and my in-laws were overjoyed at their grandchildren's visit. Patty and her family relaxed in the living room where I had just finished cleaning, with their feet thrown on the table. Seeing this, I could only stand frozen in disbelief. Huh? Why has Patty suddenly come? And with her entire family, no less. And to think of she would put her feet on the table in front of the children. Unbelievable. Actually, I had never met Patty before. This was because her family lived out of the state and rarely returned to the family home. So, this was my first time facing them. Nice to meet you. Upon my greeting, Patty stared at me as if she were scrutinizing me and mockingly said, you're Ashley, Kevin's wife? Yes, that's me. Kevin has always taken great care of me. I can't believe such a plain girl is Kevin's wife. So, Kevin likes plain girls, huh? Excuse me. At Patty's remark, everyone around us started laughing. No one tried to defend me. Seeing my reserved nature, Patty began speaking confidently as if she owned the place. Hey, sorry, but honestly, I don't want to be sisters, even in laws, with a woman who has neither a striking face nor style. I don't know what to say to that. When I see someone as introverted as you, it really bothers me. At Patty's sudden criticism, I found myself at a loss for words. While I remained silent and looked down, she said something even more unbelievable. Living so openly as a freeloader, don't you think you should show some restraint? Huh? Being at home at this hour means you're just a housewife, right? A freeloader living off my parents is really a nuisance. Patty, we have children, and an outsider like you is just in the way. Why don't freeloaders sleep in the hallway? It would make it more comfortable for me. Patty looked down on me coldly. Perhaps the people in this home are incapable of understanding others' feelings. They seem comfortable demeaning and insulting others and enjoying their reactions. Except for my husband, the entire family had a cruel streak, harboring distortions in their hearts. At that moment, I felt something inside me quietly fade away. I finally decided to stand up for myself. Oh, why didn't I realize this sooner? There was never a need to go through such hardships to live with them from the beginning. With that realization, I confronted Patty with a question. So, you find me bothersome? Yes. You're an outsider. Coming back to my parents' home only to see the face of a freeloader is unpleasant. Understood. Immediately, I packed my belongings, took my large travel bag in hand, and declared to my in-laws, then, I'll return to my parents' home. Upon hearing this, everyone expressed their surprise. I will never forget the look on my in-laws' faces at that moment. Patty and her husband were wide-eyed with shock, and my parents-in-law showed a slight sign of disturbance. With their reactions behind me, I returned to my parents' home. That night, after arriving at my parents' home, I decided to explain the situation to my husband. When I called him, he responded immediately. Hello, Ashley. Hearing my husband's affectionate voice nearly brought me to tears. Holding back my tears, I told him everything. Hey, Kevin. Actually, I've come back to my parents' home today. Why all of a sudden? Yes, I'm sorry it's so sudden, but I've reached my limit. What happened? What happened when I was away? To tell you the truth, I shared with him all the bullying I had endured, not omitting any details, including the incident that triggered it all from Patty. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Kevin, when I asked, he responded with a heavy voice. I'm coming back on the first flight tomorrow morning. I'll pick you up, so please, just one last time. Come to my family home. Huh? What do you mean by last time? I'll put an end to everything tomorrow. Them bullying you and our relationship with them. Kevin, his words made me cry uncontrollably. Encouraged by his determination, I decided to visit his family home one last time. The next day, I met up with my husband, who had cut his business trip short, and we went to his family home together. As we rang the doorbell, the door opened, and my mother-in-law appeared. Oh, Kevin, why? Aren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Seeing me by his side, my mother-in-law showed obvious confusion. With her face twitching, Kevin declared calmly, we need to talk. Is Dad and Patty home too? Yes. But what about? You should know. It's pointless to try to dodge the issue now. Perhaps sensing something from my husband's demeanor, my mother-in-law lost her words. Without trying to be polite, Kevin walked straight into the living room. As he forcefully opened the door, everyone inside turned to look at him. Oh, if it isn't Kevin, what's up? Patty said that, but my husband glared at her sharply. Then, he began to speak in a tone I had never heard him use before. Patty, apologized to Ashley. At my husband's words, Patty responded with a mocking, what? Seeing her reaction, my husband must have realized she had no intention of apologizing. He opened his carry-on case and started packing his belongings in a hurry. Watching this, my mother-in-law asked timidly, what are you doing? To which Kevin answered calmly, as you can see, I'm preparing to leave. What? Why? Why are you leaving too? Don't joke with me. You've been bullying Ashley behind my back, and you dared to ask that? I will never forgive you. I don't even want to think of you as my parents. Kevin, perhaps deeply hurt by their son's words, my parents-in-law stood there, pale-faced. At that moment, Patty, who had been watching the situation, laughed and said to her parents, "Hey, what's wrong? Dad, Mom." "Never mind, Kevin. We should be lucky that failure of a wife is leaving." "Hey, Patty, you." "Patty, stop it. Not anymore. All I need is pocket money from home. Whether Kevin and Ashley are here or not doesn't matter to me." At Patty's words, my husband asked, "Pocket money?" She answered with satisfaction, "Yes, Dad and Mom spoil me, sending money every month." "You're jealous, right? How much every month?" "Well, about $500. Sometimes it goes up to $1,000. "Huh? I see. Huh? What's wrong?" Patty seemed oblivious to the fact that her parents had no real income. The money extracted from me was likely sent to Patty by her parents. After exchanging a mutual nod of agreement with my husband, I calmly spoke to Patty. "Actually, that money was earned through my work." "What? What are you talking about? You're just a freeloader with no income." "There seems to be a misunderstanding. I work as a full-time employee, primarily from home, prioritizing my work there." "What? You actually have a job?" "Yes, I work full-time and receive a salary. I also have income from personal illustration commissions. I've paid the money demanded by your parents multiple times." "What? Wait, the money I've been receiving?" "Yes, it was my earned income." "What?" Patty seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, muttering, "What have I done?" as she held her head. Her face contorted as she looked at me, seemingly pleading for help from a desperate situation. "Ashley, I truly am sorry. I had no idea. I just assumed the money came from something like Dad's retirement fund." "And what are you trying to say?" "It seems there's a big misunderstanding. I said inappropriate things without knowing anything. I never meant it in the way it came out. So, I was hoping you could continue the money support." Why was she still trying to maintain a connection with me under these circumstances? Feeling demeaned and my anger boiling inside, I found myself unable to hold back my emotions, regardless of who was watching. Absolutely laughable. A misunderstanding? You knew nothing? Do you really think such flimsy excuses justify everything? Do you truly understand the depth of the wounds you've inflicted on us? I'm truly sorry, from the bottom of my heart. Please, can you continue the money support? What? How can such an absurd proposition even be considered? Why should I continue to send money to such heartless people? Even if you're Kevin's family, I cannot condone this. There's no way I would do anything for you. So, never show up in front of me again. With these words, Patty collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed. Then she exploded in frustration towards her parents. "What are you going to do now?" Causing a heated argument in the living room. Amidst the chaos, my husband and I decided to quietly leave his family home. Shortly after, a rift developed between Patty and her parents. Eventually, her parents faced the sadness of not seeing their grandchildren, and Patty lost her regular source of income from me, leading to a situation beneficial to neither party. I later learned that Patty's family was in a dire financial situation. Her husband had lost his job and showed no interest in finding new employment, straining their finances. Patty's continued reliance on her parents was a desperate attempt to manage their situation. However, the cessation of remittances made their already difficult life even more challenging. Now, Patty is juggling multiple part-time jobs to support her family. My husband and I have started a new life in an apartment near my parents' home. While he is away on business trips, I enjoy relaxing times at home. "If only we had made this choice from the beginning," my husband said with a hint of embarrassment. But I didn't want him to feel responsible. On the contrary, I am deeply grateful to him. When I reached my limit, he immediately listened to my pleas and took action. I am truly comforted by his acceptance of me and my feelings. That fact has been incredibly heartwarming for me. Together with my husband, I believe we can deepen our bond and continue a relationship built on mutual trust. Rescued by him, I look forward to leading a fulfilling married life together as a wonderful couple. My son, who earns a high income, and you, who spend every day without working, are not compatible. My son and I are planning to live here from now on, so please leave immediately. It happened on a day when my husband, who usually stays in his room, had gone out for a bit. Suddenly, the intercom at my house buzzed incessantly, and when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there, looking excited. Taken aback by this sudden visit, I asked, "Hello, mother-in-law. What brings you here at this time?" Before anything, answer the intercom immediately when it rings. Making me wait is quite rude, don't you think? I'm sorry, I was a bit tied up with work. Work? It's hard to believe you do any real work at home. I bet you're just lazing around, aren't you? That's not true. I'm genuinely working. I don't want to hear excuses. You live a comfortable life here every day, yet benefit from my son's high salary. I think it's unfair. We intend to start a new life here, just my son and I. Could you find somewhere else to go? She pulled out a piece of paper from an envelope she was holding and handed it to me with a smug smile. Here, take a look. The paper read divorce papers. Moreover, my husband's section was already filled out. Wait, are these divorce papers? Yes. He's also come to realize he can't be with you any longer. So, sign this and leave this place immediately. She looked incredibly proud of herself, perhaps relishing the shock she imagined I'd be in. But I wasn't as flustered as she thought. With a slight smile, I promptly signed the divorce papers. Inwardly, I couldn't help but chuckle at how much she misunderstood. She didn't know anything. My name is Nancy. I work from home, hustling as a freelance writer and editor. I used to work for a publishing company, so I've leveraged that experience to maintain a stable income even now. While working at the publishing company, it wasn't uncommon to work late into the night or even on weekends. But the compensation was good, and thanks to my salary, bonuses, and copyright-related rewards from the publishing world, I managed to save a considerable amount. Thanks to that, despite the instability of freelancing, I've been able to live comfortably. I met my husband, Dylan, while working together at the publishing company. He was an aspiring writer, chasing his dreams, and I supported and resonated with his passion. Gradually, my feelings of appreciation turned into love, leading to our marriage. Initially, our married life was fulfilling as we supported each other's careers. Upon getting married, I started freelancing, switching to working from home. Until then, I believed both my husband and in-laws understood and appreciated my career and income. However, as time passed, it seemed their misunderstandings about my work grew. My in-laws held traditional values. In their generation, the concept of working from home wasn't common. They also perceived freelancing as unstable, especially compared to my husband's regular employment, and thus devalued my work. Additionally, Dylan began telling his parents how successful he had become as a renowned writer. Because of this, the cold attitude of my in-laws towards me intensified. Every time we met, they'd sarcastically say things like, "Oh, look, it's Nancy who doesn't seem to work much. What brings you here today? Looking for a job recommendation? Mother-in-law, if you're concerned about our living expenses, I apologize, but I'm earning well, so there's no need to worry." Well, you sound quite confident. Maybe you should show more gratitude to Dylan. Without him, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you? My mother-in-law had old-fashioned values. In her generation, women typically managed the household while men worked outside. Thus, seeing me work from home, she likely assumed I was shirking housework. The story paints a picture of generational and cultural differences, misunderstandings, and challenges within a family. Mother-in-law, freelancing means that you can earn a good income even without going to an office and working from home. Nowadays, with technological advancements, we can work from anywhere, and my job falls into that category. However, my mother-in-law responded angrily, all you do is talk back. You're such an unpleasant daughter-in-law. It just doesn't look natural for a young woman to be messing around with a computer at home all day. Lately, these kinds of conversations had been recurring, and I was honestly getting a bit tired of it. I swallowed down my retort, thinking, not this topic again. Inwardly, I thought, in reality, I'm the main breadwinner, and I handle most of the housework, but I didn't say it out loud. In the beginning, her occasional complaints only occurred when Dylan wasn't around, but recently, she's been saying them more openly, especially during family dinners at her house, which felt more like a session to criticize me than anything else. Despite being invited, only Dylan's portion of food would be on the table. There was no seat for me, making it very uncomfortable. Moreover, she seemed to badmouth me to other relatives, and I could hear whispered comments, which were very unpleasant. I was often taken aback by her and my father-in-law's attitudes, but Dylan's silence also irritated me. On top of that, they saw Dylan as a successful author and relied on him for money, often asking him to buy things. This was funded by the money I earned. Initially, it was a small amount, but lately, I noticed we were spending almost $2,000 monthly for his parents. I decided to tell Dylan, I want you to stop giving my earnings to your parents without asking me. But his response was colder than I expected. You're earning money while relaxing at home, right? It's easy money, so why not let my parents use a bit of it? Wait, Dylan, do you really think I'm just lounging around at home to earn my money? I couldn't hide my shock at his words. It felt like the last straw. I felt betrayed, confused, and sad. Even though there were challenges with his parents and our differing backgrounds, I believed Dylan was on my side, which helped me persevere. That reassurance was shattered by his words. Dylan, who I thought understood my feelings and efforts, ended up joining those who mocked me behind my back. I remembered our first date when he passionately talked about his work, shared dreams, and values. I was drawn to his enthusiasm and sincerity. But lately, he seemed to have forgotten his dreams and passion and spent his days aimlessly, often engrossed in games. And that figure was completely different from the person he was when we first met. Games aren't bad in themselves, but his obsession made him neglect his passion for writing, which saddened and angered me. I started questioning if I should continue my future with Dylan. If my relationship with Dylan continued, what would become of my life? Even when I tried to imagine a future with him, I could only see a bleak future. Thus, I decided to divorce him and secretly began looking for a new place to live. I searched online for apartments suitable for singles and visited a few properties for viewing. Focusing on apartments with a quiet living environment and strong security, I finally decided on one property. One day, while Dylan, who usually played games in his room, was out, my mother-in-law visited. Surprised by her sudden visit, I opened the door. Without waiting, she sat on the living room sofa and bluntly said, "Nancy, you should leave this place. What are you saying all of a sudden?" I was too shocked to respond. Isn't it obvious? You're bad at housework, and even after Dylan became a popular author, you haven't changed. Above all, you can't even work properly. But I've told you many times that it's a misunderstanding, haven't I? However, my mother-in-law interrupted me, smiling gently. I plan to live here and support Dylan. Taking care of him is much better than looking after that noisy old lady. By noisy old lady, do you mean Dylan's grandmother? Yes, that woman who is technically my mother-in-law. Even though I've done so much for her, she always finds fault. She shows no gratitude, and I'm fed up. If I live here, I can take care of Dylan, and he can focus on his work without any hindrance. Isn't that wonderful? With that, she pulled out a piece of paper from the envelope she held. So, would you please leave this house immediately? As I listened to her words, I accepted the divorce papers she held out. They had been signed by Dylan. Did Dylan really sign this? A little while ago, I suggested to Dylan that it might be better for both of you to get a divorce. It seems he was fed up with you two because he signed it without hesitation, she said with a playful tone. Everything that followed happened so quickly. I took my pre-packed bags and promptly decided to move to a new apartment. During the move, I also managed to file the divorce papers, and a new life began. My new life was more smooth and comfortable than I had expected. My small apartment had only essential furniture and appliances, and its simplicity seemed to boost my focus. I was free from complications, and each day was calm and peaceful. I'd wake up to natural light streaming in through the window and the sound of birds chirping in the distance. I would get up whenever I wanted, eat breakfast, and plan my day. When I start working, I get so engrossed that time would fly by. It felt heavenly not having to worry about the gaze and expectations of Dylan and my parents-in-laws, and to be able to work at my own pace. One day, as I was engrossed in work at my desk, my smartphone vibrated. It was a call from Dylan. I hesitated but decided to answer. "Nancy, please come back right now." A desperate Dylan pleaded. "Why would you want me to come back all of a sudden?" To be honest, my parents found out I lied about being a popular author. I'm under immense pressure now. They're even talking about moving in, expecting to live off my earnings. So, please, can you come back? I see, but returning isn't that simple. You chose to sign the divorce papers, didn't you? So did I. We're not on the same path anymore. So deal with your issues yourself. It's none of my business. His voice was a mix of desperation and sadness. But I believe we should be together. Please come back. Firmly, I responded, "We've chosen different lives now." I could hear Dylan taking a deep breath on the other end. "I understand, but since the divorce, there have been many troubles, and it's costing me a lot. I need assistance with expenses like the care fees for our parents and compensations for the chaos it caused." "Why are you suddenly talking about this? I think your decisions played a part in ruining all of my plans." "How dare you? Remember when we were married how you and your parents mocked me? I didn't want to say this, but now you seem like an enemy. Your financial troubles arise because you don't work properly. Find another way to sort it out. I wish you wouldn't rely on me for everything." With that, I ended the call. Despite numerous subsequent calls from Dylan, I blocked him and changed my number. A few months later, I happened to pass by where his house used to be. Instead of his house, there was now just an empty land. A nearby resident told me about the recent disputes at his place, with police getting involved at times. The neighbor's words seemed to contain all the emotions of the situation. As she said, "You must have gone through a lot, too. There must have been a lot of turmoil leading to the loss of his house." I stood there for a while, reflecting on our past. The unexpected outcome might be some kind of karma. Dylan's little lie had had such a significant impact, more unbelievable than any story he might have written. From then on, I pledged to myself to live honestly, expressing my feelings and thoughts without lies or pretense. No matter how challenging things get, I recognize the importance of conveying the truth and cherishing genuine feelings. Oh, you're still here? Don't overstay your welcome. Ordinary people should live in places that suit them. Now, I will pay $1,000 for the mortgage, so please leave. I thought, despite having to pay $2,700 every month. I was stunned by the sudden loud voice of my sister-in-law and by how off-target her remarks were. She stiffened her stance, saying, "I won't let you guys use our house any longer. From now on, my husband and I will live here." Then she ordered me to leave the house. It seemed that similar things had been said to my husband, and my sister-in-law was desperate to drive us out. My husband, Keith, always calm, replied, "If my sister says so, we should leave." I decided to accompany him and leave the house. An unexpected future awaited my sister-in-law and her husband after they drove us out. A month after we left, they learned of the reality that awaited them. My name is Vanessa. My husband and I are a working couple. The incident where my sister-in-law came to our house and tried to drive us out began when we started living with my in-laws. At that time, my sister-in-law Rachel was accompanying her husband on his overseas assignment and was not in the US, leaving her parents alone. During this period, my in-laws began to wish to live with us in their house. Living together. As I was surprised, my mother-in-law said, "We are getting older, and living alone brings anxieties. Being with you both will give us peace of mind." Suddenly invited to my husband's family home, we were presented with the proposal to live together. This was unexpected not only for me but also for my husband, Keith. We initially met through a matchmaking app. Meeting through such apps is common, but often interactions end after the first meeting or communication fades away. However, Keith continued to communicate through emails and we had several meals together. I liked Keith and felt that he had similar feelings for me. After 2 years of dating, we got married. Our parents were very pleased with our marriage, given our close ages. However, there was one person whose reaction was unclear. That was Keith's sister, Rachel. She was 3 years older than Keith and had been married for a year when we announced our engagement. Rachel boasted about marrying before Keith, saying, "I'm surprised Keith is getting married. Compared to an elite like me, Keith is ordinary, but it's good he found someone. Though she is far inferior to me, at least he's marrying a common woman." I was shocked by her words. Moreover, Rachel continued, "My husband is set for an overseas assignment, being a successful man. I'm fluent in Spanish, so I'll accompany him. I suppose Keith and his wife can't even imagine our wonderful life." I didn't feel angry at that moment, probably because her behavior seemed so childish. It wasn't because I was particularly tolerant, but because Rachel, who looked down on us, seemed insignificant to me. Keith was probably used to Rachel's behavior and showed his usual smile. Since Keith wasn't perturbed, I decided not to respond to Rachel's comments. She was used to being ignored by her brother, so my lack of response was probably frustrating for her. "Was it Vanessa? Are you sure about choosing Keith? I might be older, but even as a woman, I think I'm superior to him," she asked me. I responded, "Keith is very important to me." I answered out of love for Keith, but Rachel seemed unsatisfied, saying, "But true happiness for a woman comes from marrying a high-status man and living a wealthy life. High status itself brings wonderful feelings. Indeed, some people value being financially supported by a high-income spouse. However, I don't share that value," and shook my head, saying, "I don't agree with that view." With this reply, Rachel seemed to consider me as someone different, a loser who couldn't share her values. "Well, marrying Keith means you're also an ordinary person. Both of you will lead a boring, uneventful life. There are many people who follow such a fate, so don't be pessimistic and do your best," she concluded. I was just shocked by the harsh words directed at us, as we looked forward to our wedding and wished for happiness. Keith always responded calmly to Rachel's words. Witnessing this, I felt my heart wasn't as disturbed by Rachel's words as I had thought, and I regained my composure. Sometime after our wedding, Rachel and her husband moved abroad. As a result, my in-laws, feeling lonely without Rachel and her husband around, proposed that we live with them. Since there was no clear reason to refuse, we accepted the temporary living arrangement until Rachel and her husband returned. Over time, to our surprise, Rachel's husband's overseas tenure extended far beyond the initial plan. And though it felt like a blink of an eye, 10 years had already passed since we started living under one roof. During this time, I was blessed to welcome a healthy baby boy into our new family. However, one concern arose during our extended cohabitation: the aging of our long-inhabited home. Every time our energetic son ran around the house, we worried whether the old pillars and walls could withstand the impact. Without any concrete solutions or suggestions from my in-laws, time just passed by. Perhaps they were also unable to directly address the aging house due to financial constraints or other reasons. Even so, we looked towards a solution: demolishing the old house and building a new one on the same land. Building a new house not only freed us from concerns about aging but also reduced the risk of damage, no matter how vigorously our son played. When we decided on this, my in-laws were very pleased with the plan. They expressed their feelings and deep desire to continue living with us. Fortunately, after making this decision, we faced no major issues and began preparing for our new stage in life. As we are not wealthy, paying for the new house in one go was impossible, and we resorted to a mortgage, continuing to pay $2,700 monthly. Initially, we hoped my in-laws would contribute to the mortgage. So we proposed, "Father, Mother, we'd like to discuss the house mortgage. What do you think about contributing $1,000 monthly?" They were visibly surprised, questioning, "Why should we pay for it? Isn't the house built by you both? We are just guests and shouldn't bear the cost," refusing to contribute to the mortgage. We had expected them to contribute $1,000 considering their regular incomes, or at least $500 if $1,000 was too much. Contrary to our expectations, they maintained that the house construction was our independent decision and refused any financial involvement. Clearly, arguing wouldn't solve anything, so we decided to manage the mortgage repayments ourselves. Then, one day, Rachel, though living abroad, somehow heard about us living with my in-laws in the new house and questioned, "Vanessa, I heard that you've been living with my parents while we're abroad. Is that true?" Despite explaining, "Yes, it's true. Your sudden absence made your parents feel lonely, and we decided to live together," Rachel abruptly denied my words. Confused, I asked, "Why do you think I'm lying?" She claimed, "Because you and Keith are just ordinary people. There's no way you'd live with my parents. They rely on our elite family." Rachel, who quit her job to become a homemaker abroad, considers herself elite, a concept I find hard to grasp. She taunted, "See, you can't argue because I'm right," leaving me with a wry smile. Despite all her misplaced assertions, I was unsure how to react to her confident demeanor. "By the way, we're planning to return to the US next month." "Oh, you're coming back? I'll let your parents know." Since starting their overseas life, Rachel and her husband rarely visited their home, and they hardly came by even when in the US. My in-laws would surely be happy to hear of Rachel's return. "No, it's not just a visit. We'll be living in that house from now on." "What do you mean?" "That means you're no longer needed there." I couldn't hide my surprise at that statement. Rachel living in the family home means her husband's overseas assignment has ended. Initially, we planned to move out at this point, but the issue was the mortgage. It seems that Rachel and her husband would then take over the monthly mortgage payment of $2,700. Her husband, interested with a job overseas, and Rachel, who considers herself elite, should have no trouble with the mortgage payments. Thinking this, I remained silent. Rachel informed me of her return and then maintained her stance. I briefly replied, understood, and ended the call. Considering our future plans, I quickly relayed Rachel's message to Keith. Our son was at school when we talked about this. At that time, my in-laws, sensing that their daughter was coming back, appeared in the living room with beaming smiles. They were delighted, saying, "Finally, Rachel and her family are coming back. This marks the end of our unstable days." Throughout this period, we bore the burden of mortgage repayments. But my in-laws supported daily expenses like electricity and food. We strongly felt the need to avoid a lopsided financial burden in our living arrangement. However, my in-laws were constantly worried, often expressing concerns that making us bear the living costs means your financial situation must be unstable. Indeed, before we started living together, Rachel and her husband, who lived with my in-laws, never let them bear any costs, and they compared us based on that fact. While our stance wasn't fundamentally problematic, Rachel's family's return deemed our presence unnecessary. From the beginning, Keith and I saw Rachel and her husband's return as the end of our temporary shared living. Hence, we started preparing for our departure. Now, the responsibility for the mortgage payment will shift to Rachel and her husband, significantly reducing our burden. However, their sudden announcement to return made finding a suitable property challenging. Eventually, Rachel and her husband arrived. "Wow, this old house has transformed so much. What a surprise." Rachel expressed her astonishment and then turned to me. "Oh, you're still here? Don't overstay your welcome. Ordinary people should live in places that suit them." Now, I will pay $1,000 for the mortgage, so please leave. Despite having to pay $2,700 every month. I thought this but realized the $1,000 was something Rachel heard from my in-laws. We had discussed a monthly contribution of $1,000 when we asked for their assistance with the payments. We planned to cover living expenses if they took on that payment, but ultimately, my in-laws decided against bearing the $1,000, leading us to request they cover living costs. Keith and I, even as a family, disliked the idea of one-sided burdens. At that time, it was clear to me that Rachel had misunderstood. She defended her stance, saying, "I won't let you and your husband use our house any longer. From now on, my husband and I will live here." Then she ordered me to leave the house. When Keith returned from work that day, Rachel said similar things to him, desperately trying to kick us out. Keith, always calm, replied, "If my sister says so, we should leave." I agreed with him. We were already planning to leave, not rushed by Rachel. But there were things to settle before departing. There's still a remaining mortgage debt, so we'll leave it to you and your husband. Keith said that as he presented the mortgage documents. Sure, the monthly payment is easy for us. Rachel and her husband easily agreed to take on the mortgage repayment responsibility. Seeing this, we decided to leave the house and felt relieved. We always thought a shorter term of shared living was preferable, especially considering our growing son. We also wanted to avoid living with somewhat impolite in-laws. On moving day, Rachel commented, "So you're finally leaving. I heard from our parents. You've been letting them bear the living costs, haven't you? How does a couple with a child manage in such a situation? Have you been raising a child without money?" Bo criticized. We were too busy with the move to our new home to dwell on her words. We just didn't have the time to listen. Watching us busy with the moving process, Rachel was muttering, "How presumptuous." Yet, we managed to settle into our new home. During a busy period, my in-laws were very happy with Rachel and her husband's return, celebrating without showing much interest in our relocation. Rachel seemed to sense that our quick departure meant we did not want any future issues with them. We chose not to disclose our new home's location to my in-laws or Rachel and her husband, effectively avoiding the possibility of them intruding. About a month after we left the family home, I received several calls from Rachel. Since I noticed the calls late, I hurried to answer and found a confused and agitated Rachel demanding, "What in the world is this? What's with the $2,700 monthly mortgage? And why are my parents saying they have no money?" Actually, Rachel was under the impression that we had been paying $1,000 monthly. However, we thought this misunderstanding was cleared when her husband checked the relevant documents during the mortgage transfer and signature process. We believed that no one would overlook important documents regarding their future home. But wasn't it clearly stated in the documents that the monthly mortgage payment for this house was set at $2,700? What? That must be a joke. Suddenly $2,700. Rachel panicked. "I thought that you and your husband, being high-income elites, wouldn't need to worry about the amount," I said honestly, and Rachel, with a faint voice on the phone, started, "Well, actually, I'm not working right now, and my husband has just returned from overseas after causing some problems. Our income has decreased compared to before." I was frankly surprised that she, who had acted superior when driving us out of the family home, couldn't even afford the monthly repayments we had been making. Moreover, Rachel had more troubling news. "Why are my parents saying that they are in financial trouble? Weren't they supporting you by bearing your living expenses?" "Oh, you thought so? Actually, we were covering the full mortgage, only hoping they could help a bit with living expenses. But we didn't receive much financial help from them. They spend their money at the casino almost every day." Casino. Yes, casino. It seems my in-laws weren't into gambling before we started living together. They became addicted in the past few years, and Rachel might not have been aware of this fact. With hardly any income, and now a monthly expense of $2,700. I was counting on my parents' money, and now there's none. "Vanessa, Please lend me some money," Rachel pleaded. However, I declined. Despite her looking down on us, she was asking for help from us, the ordinary people, when in trouble, indicating her desperation. But we have a growing son and need to save for the future, so we couldn't afford to support another household. I conveyed this fact and ended the call. Later, I heard Rachel and her in-laws tried to visit our new home without planning, only to end up at the wrong address and inadvertently involved the police. Rachel, who has found a new job, is keeping her in-laws away from the casino, pulling her part-time earnings for mortgage repayments. On weekends, the four of them create a very tense atmosphere at home. Whether they will eventually lose the house or manage to complete the mortgage payments remains uncertain, but we are focusing on enjoying our lives without worrying about their situation. Whatever the future holds, we, the three of us, are committed to not assisting Rachel, her husband, and my in-laws, enjoying our days to the fullest. My sister's remittances are just like a child's allowance, aren't they? Haha. If you can, try stopping the payments. Haha. I've been sending money to my family for 18 years since becoming a working adult. Yet, to be treated like this by my parents and sister, unforgivable. I've worked so hard for my family. I'll decisively cut ties with these people. My name is Wendy. I am 37 years old. For 18 years since graduating high school, I have been diligently working as a working adult. I have a younger sister named Jennifer, who is much younger than me. Jennifer graduated from university a few years ago and has been working for 4 years. Unlike me, Jennifer has been spoiled by our parents from the moment she was born. After Jennifer was born, our parents' affection completely shifted towards her. Even though they were warm to me before, they gradually became indifferent. Mom, there's a school event coming up. Even when I tell my mom about school events, she doesn't seem to look at me. Mom's busy taking care of Jennifer right now. But I was told to make sure to tell you and Dad by my teacher. Yeah, just leave the printout over there. Oh, and Mom, today's lunch was pasta. You're so persistent. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Can't you see I'm busy with Jennifer? I'm sorry. Conversations with my stay-at-home mom decreased, but it was the same with my dad. He ignores me and heads straight to Jennifer when he comes home from work. Jennifer, I'm ho. Dad's back. Dad. Today at school. What, Wendy? School stuff is for your mom. Dad's tired from work, but Mom's busy with Jennifer. Dad's tired and wants to see Jennifer's face to get energized. Be quiet for a bit. Okay. It's true that Jennifer is cuter in both appearance and personality. I admit that. With her clear double eyelids, beautifully curled chestnut hair, adorable laugh, and friendly nature despite her youth, Jennifer has everything I don't. Yet, I still longed for our parents' love. Even when I got into the top high school in the county, there wasn't even a congratulations from them. And then, in the fall of my senior year of high school, I tried to talk to my parents about my future during dinner. Mom, Dad, about college. At my words, my father frowned. Listen, Wendy, you're the eldest daughter, so from now on, live for Jennifer's sake. What? What do you mean, for Jennifer's sake? After you graduate from high school, don't go to college. Start working and help out with the household expenses. Help out. We live in a rental property. So, at least pay the rent. A rental property. But this is public housing, and it costs $1,000 a month. Are you saying I should pay $1,000 every month? If you become a full-time employee, that should be possible. Wait a minute. With my current grades, I could easily get into a national university, I've been told by my teacher. Then, my mother, who was next to him, interjected. National university? What's the use of someone ordinary like you going there? Not you too, Mom. There's something I want to study. So, no way. Jennifer is still young and will need a lot of money for her going forward. We can't afford to spend any more on you. But there are scholarships, and I'll make sure not to be a burden on the household finances. I'll work part-time and contribute money to the house. Please, you're really persistent. As your parents, we are saying it's not possible. Children don't have the right to defy that. That's so unfair. Despite my homeroom teacher pleading with my parents several times, they never changed their minds. In the end, I gave up on going to college, obtained some qualifications, and started working as a full-time employee at a local small to medium-sized enterprise. Though the company was small, my qualifications came in handy, and I was able to earn a decent salary even as a high school graduate. Since moving out in my third year of working and living alone, I've continued to send the designated rent to my parents, while being frugal with my own living expenses. Even so, I finally got married, albeit later than most. To inform my parents, I returned home for the first time in a while. In the front yard, my parents and sister were having a cheerful conversation. I'm home. Before I could greet them, I overheard a shocking conversation. We only consider Jennifer to be our daughter, right, Sarah? That's right. Jennifer graduated from college and even got a job at the same company as Dad. In comparison, Wendy. She only finished high school and got a job at some unknown company. Dad feels ashamed. Exactly. We took care of her until she graduated high school, and yet, she hasn't even said thank you. What an ungrateful child. Then Jennifer, unaware that I was listening, began to speak. Mom, Dad, don't be too harsh. It's pitiful for my sister, right? After all, she's working hard for us even with her lower education level. Haha. Well, indeed. You're right about that, Jennifer. Yes. Even if she's not that capable, she can earn money. Let's continue to take as much as we can from her. That's right. If Wendy pays the rent, we can save money, and we can spend that on other things, right? Jennifer will need various things now that she's working. Unlike Wendy, Jennifer is beautiful, so she needs money for her upkeep. That's right. I even got scouted by a model agency on the street the other day. That's my daughter. Wendy is a far cry from you. I wonder who she takes after. That's why. Even the little monthly change from a sister like that is better than nothing. Well, it's a bit embarrassing she only finished high school though. Haha. The moment I heard that conversation, something inside me snapped. Unbelievable. Do they have any idea how much I've worked for this family? Following instructions, working, and sending money home. I've even sent birthday presents every year since becoming an adult. And above all, I've been paying this house's rent in full. I thought someday they would praise me. Someday they would acknowledge me with faint hope. But all of that was just a dream. Instead, to be spoken of so terribly behind my back. Before I knew it, I had stepped into the yard. My parents and sister looked at me in surprise. Embarrassed about being a high school graduate? Do you understand why I couldn't go to college? With an awkward face, Jennifer asked, Sis, you were here? I directed my anger at her. I was told by Dad and Mom to work for your sake, you know? I really wanted to go to college. There was so much I wanted to study. I didn't know that. Jennifer retorted just as defiantly. Can you stop getting mad for no reason? No matter how much you yell at me, it won't change the fact that you have a low education level, so stop acting so high and mighty. Haha, how can you say such things? I heard the conversation earlier, you all just see me as a convenient source of money. Jennifer snorted with laughter. Took you long enough to notice? Sis, being a high school graduate is embarrassing for us, you know? The only useful thing you can do is earn money and send it home, so stop being so proud. Haha, will you stop it? As I moved to push Jennifer away, Dad stopped me. Then he coldly said to me, Hey Wendy, what are you doing to your sister? Have you lost your mind? Not only are you low educated, but your character has fallen too? Wait, Dad, you're the crazy one. It's all because you and Mom have always prioritized Jennifer. That's natural, isn't it? Jennifer is the cutest. From the moment Jennifer was born, we lost interest in you. What? What's that supposed to mean? Aren't I just as much a daughter to you and Mom as Jennifer is? Shock and anger made tears well up in my eyes. Seeing this, my parents coldly said to me, A daughter? We don't think of a high school graduate like you as our daughter. Don't come back to our home with such low education. Just like Dad said, don't get ahead of yourself just because you put in a little money. Oh, is that so? I glared back at my parents. If that's the case, I guess I don't need to send money anymore, right? Yeah, that's fine. You were never part of the family to begin with. Well then, let's cleanly cut ties here. Dad and Jennifer are working and Jennifer is at the same company as Dad, after all. You won't need my help, will you? Haha. Then, my sister Jennifer too flashed a malicious smile. The money you send home is just like a kid's allowance, right? Haha. Try stopping the payments if you can. Haha. Oh, is that okay with you? I'll really stop sending money, you know? Dad and Mom said they want to cut ties, right? It's embarrassing to have a low-educated sister like you. If this means we can cut ties, then maybe it's actually lucky for us. Understood. Then, I'll gladly do just that. I'll never have anything to do with you at all again. I told everyone that and left my family home. And so, without even sharing the news of my marriage, I severed ties with my family. 6 months later, I received a call from my father. Reluctantly, I answered the phone, and my father said in a panicked tone, "Is that you, Wendy?" "It's me, your dad." "I know. What do you want? Help me, please." "Huh? What do you mean? I thought we had cut ties." "Don't say that. I'm really in trouble right now. Could you please start sending at least the rent again?" "What are you talking about? Have you forgotten that you said my money was just like a kid's allowance?" "I was wrong back then. I apologize. Please, our family might fall apart at this rate." Hearing that, I couldn't help but snicker. "Ah, that's right, Dad. You got fired from your job, so things must be tough, huh? What? Your company was acquired by another company, right? Plus, it turns out you were embezzling money, so getting fired was only natural." "What? How did you know?" "Because the company that acquired yours belongs to my husband." "What? Husband?" "Yes, my husband was the next CEO. His father's company had acquired the one where my father worked. During that process, my father's embezzlement came to light, and he was immediately fired. I was aware that my husband was going to be the next CEO, but I didn't know about the company's situation. Then my husband mentioned there was an employee who embezzled money at the acquired company, and coincidentally, he had the same last name as Winnie. Curious, I looked into it and found out that the employee was my own father. After stopping the remittances, I had been looking forward to my family facing difficulties. However, embezzlement was a pitiful act. There's no doubt they were struggling financially. The $1,000 rent I stopped paying must have been a significant blow to them. After I finished explaining, my father said in a trembling voice, "If you knew, why didn't you reach out to help? Why should I have to reach out? You're my daughter. Not just me, but your mom and Jennifer are struggling too. Don't you want to help your family?" No, not at all. I don't feel even a shred of desire to help you." "What are you saying?" It seemed my father had put the phone on speaker as my mother and sister began to blame me together. "Come on, Wendy. Enough is enough. In a situation like this." "That's right, Cess. From what you said, isn't your husband the son of a CEO? You must have quite a lot of money, right?" I sighed deeply on the phone. So what if I have money? And that means I should help you?" "Of course. Your family is in trouble. Cess, you know, right? I'm working at the same company as Dad. Dad's embezzlement has spread throughout the company, and I'm isolated there. I don't care about that. Plus, we cut ties months ago. And now what? Being a family only when it's convenient for you, expecting help now. Isn't that too convenient? Are you stupid?" Truth be told, I was furious, and now all three of them started yelling at me. Enough is enough. We'll retract the disownment. So, start sending money again right away." "That's right. We raised you until you grew up, so you should properly show your gratitude." "Sis, the family is in trouble. Do something as an older sister." Their selfish demands made me feel nauseous. Taking a deep breath, I lashed out at them. "Hey, enough with this family nonsense. I've already cut ties with you, and I have no obligation to help you. To only act like a family when it suits you. No matter how much trouble you're in or how miserable the outcome, it has nothing to do with me. All three of you can go to hell, you scum." I hung up the phone and immediately blocked the contact details of my parents and sister. Since then, I haven't seen them. Now that I'm married and living in a new home with my husband, it's unlikely they'll be able to find me. Rumor has it that my father couldn't repay the embezzled money and ended up in legal trouble. My sister, known in the company as the embezzler's daughter, resigned in an awkward atmosphere. With both of their breadwinners gone, my mother is juggling part-time jobs while depleting their savings to get by. Naturally, they couldn't afford the house rent and apparently moved into a cramped one-room apartment. There's no prospect of repaying my father's embezzlement, and my mother's part-time income is barely covering living expenses. My sister hasn't found a new job and has been shut in her room indefinitely. The end for the family that drove me away turned out to be quite grim. Well, it's their own fault. Meanwhile, I've been working as a secretary after my husband took over as CEO. Though I'm still inexperienced and busy every day, my life is incomparably more fulfilling than before. From now on, I'll forget about such a family and live my life thinking only of my new family. "Why do you, a complete stranger, insist on staying in our house for so long?" My sister-in-law reprimanded me with an angry voice. After losing my beloved husband, I continued living with my in-laws. Was I not allowed to be there? "I never thought you were this kind of woman. Leave as soon as possible." Even my usually kind mother-in-law began to criticize me harshly. If that's how it was, I'd leave on my own. These were the words I screamed in my heart. but I suppressed them. I understand, I said while vowing revenge. My name is Gina, and I am 40 years old. I work as an elementary school teacher. My husband, James, also an elementary school teacher at a different school, was 42 that year. We were married for 12 years. We met at the first elementary school I worked at after graduating from college. James, 2 years my senior, was a reliable senior colleague who taught me various things about school life. Through work, we were drawn to each other and eventually got married. I loved children and became a teacher to spend time with them. But sadly, we didn't have any children. My father-in-law passed away in his 50s before we got married, and James lived with his mother until I joined the family. Thanks to the real estate and other assets inherited from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law was financially secure. However, since the beginning of our marriage, we had decided to pay $2,000 monthly to my in-laws. We had a dream we wanted to realize. Despite needing to save for it, we regularly transferred money to my in-laws for utilities, food, and a small rent out of a sense of duty. We continued to work as teachers, increasingly worried about the growing number of children not attending school. Our dream was to establish a learning center where such children could study comfortably. James' older sister, Mary, who is 3 years older than him, is married and lives in another state. My sister-in-law has a son, but he left home last spring for studies, so it should be just the two of them now. Although living about an hour's drive away, my sister-in-law visited every weekend, asking my mother-in-law for financial help. My son's tuition is short. Can you help a little? My sister-in-law would softly ask, "Really? It can't be helped. How much do you need?" My mother-in-law would spoil my sister-in-law for some reason. James couldn't understand why. Frustrated, he finally asked his sister one day, "Sis, you received a fair amount from Dad's inheritance, right? Why are you always short of money?" He asked incredulously. My sister-in-law then retaliated. "You don't have any kids, so you wouldn't understand. Raising children is incredibly expensive. You talk about inheritance, but that money can't last forever." However, my sister-in-law's spending was clearly excessive even in my eyes. Once she asked for money for education, another time for home repairs, and before that, for food. Every time, my mother-in-law would give my sister-in-law a considerable amount. I couldn't understand why. That day, we went to our respective schools as usual. An ordinary morning, the usual scenery. Until that phone call. I received news that James had collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Urged to hurry there, I exclaimed in shock, "What? My husband collapsed?" Confused, but upon reaching the hospital, I found James unconscious and he had to undergo thorough examinations. I wished it was all a bad dream. But despite aggressive treatment, James passed away that night. Faced with this unexpected event, I didn't even have time to cry, immediately taking leave from work to arrange the funeral. I felt I couldn't mentally survive otherwise. My mother-in-law, likely more heartbroken than me, courteously received the mourners throughout the funeral. It was an opportunity to meet my sister-in-law's family again. My sister-in-law's husband, Robert, and their son, Alex, who was a college student, helped devotedly. However, my sister-in-law herself didn't seem to grieve over her own brother's death. It almost seemed like she was happy about it. After James' funeral, I returned to my mother-in-law's house. My sister-in-law's family said they had other things to do and went home without dropping by. Then, my mother-in-law spoke quietly. "Gina, I never thought being bereaved of my son would be this lonely." Hearing these words, my pent-up sadness burst out, and I broke down crying. "If it's okay with you, Gina, would you stay in this house forever? I'm lonely living by myself." My mother-in-law spoke kindly to me. "Let's support each other from now on, Mother," I replied, wiping away my tears. However, more troubles followed. Just as we decided to live together, my mother-in-law suddenly collapsed. It might have been due to the grief of losing her son. She was diagnosed with a stroke. Fortunately, she survived but was left with paralysis in her right side. My mother-in-law, relying on a cane, wished to continue living in her house. "There are so many memories in this house. I want to spend my time here," She said that with a slightly slurred speech, but with determination. I'm fine, so please continue to focus on your work, Gina, my mother-in-law kindly told me. However, I was worried about leaving my half-paralyzed mother-in-law alone at home. We decided to use long-term care insurance for home care with the help of a helper. Even after James passed away, I continued to contribute $2,000 monthly for my mother-in-law. However, my sister-in-law started visiting her mother more frequently. I'm just worried about Mom, my sister-in-law said, but could anyone understand this? From past experiences, I felt I shouldn't easily believe my sister-in-law's words. My mother-in-law, having lost her mobility and feeling weak, asked, Gina, Mary wants to live here with us. What do you think? Mary wants to. What about her husband? I asked in surprise. Alex is already in college and not at home. She says it's okay for her to live here alone. Her husband might move here eventually too. My mother-in-law explained. I felt uneasy and asked frankly, if you think it's good, I won't oppose it, but what about me? What are you saying, Gina? You're like a daughter to me. It's totally fine for you to be here, my mother-in-law assured me. However, if my sister-in-law actually moved into the house, I wouldn't be able to stop her like James did. This left me with unresolved anxiety. Amid these concerns, I had to leave the house for a week-long training, leaving my mother-in-law's care to the helper. Mother, I'll be away for a week from tomorrow, so please follow the helper's instructions, I said, trying to sound lighthearted to ease my mother-in-law's anxiety. Don't give money to Mary if she comes, and if something seems odd, contact her husband, too. I was very worried about the possibility of my sister-in-law visiting the house during her absence. I couldn't concentrate on my training because of this worry. Upon returning home after a week, I was greeted by my sister-in-law. Welcome back, Mom wants to talk to you. My sister-in-law looked at me with a smug smile. I had an ominous feeling. Entering the living room, my mother-in-law looked at me with a displeased expression. I'm back, I greeted timidly, overwhelmed by the atmosphere. Gina, were you trying to kick me out and put me in a facility? My mother-in-law suddenly accused me with anger. Confused by the situation, my sister-in-law chimed in. Hey, Gina, remember what you said before? You said, I want to put Mom in a facility. It's too much to handle her, didn't you? She continued as if I had said such a thing. It's okay since you're a stranger anyway. I'll take care of Mom from now on so you don't need to be here anymore. My sister-in-law said this to me with a deliberately harsh face. My mother-in-law also showed her anger, screaming at me with a fierce look. I can't believe it. You're a nuisance. Just leave quickly. Understood? I will leave. With no strength to argue back, I held back my tears and started packing my belongings. Leaving behind the items filled with memories of James, I took only the essentials and left the house. Thank you for everything, I said at the entrance, to which my sister-in-law, who was eager to drive me out, said, You're still here? Leave quickly. A mix of sadness and frustration greatly disturbed my heart. Being driven out of the house, returned to my parents' home without notice. What happened, Gina? What's with the luggage? My mother couldn't hide her surprise at my sudden return. Sorry for the suddenness, but right now, I don't want to talk about it. I'll go to work from here, so please leave me alone for a while. The room I used to occupy at my parents' house was now empty. I laid down the luggage, laid on the floor, and gazed at the ceiling, letting my thoughts wander. What did my sister-in-law plan to do with her own family? My mother-in-law had mentioned that Robert might eventually move in with her, but I never sensed such intentions from my sister-in-law. I wanted to think it was none of my business anymore, but I couldn't stay silent when I thought of my mother-in-law. Then I remembered something. The day before James collapsed, he tried to tell me something and was about to hand me an envelope. But he was called away by his mother, and I never got to hear about the envelope from him. What could be inside it? Could it be a will? I was worried. Hesitantly, I opened the envelope and checked its contents. It was. Seeing what was inside the envelope, I was astonished. The next day, I left for work from my parents' house, reported my training to the principal, returned to my duties, and ended the day as if nothing had happened. "Excuse me, I'm leaving now." I said that as I prepared to leave, and a colleague said to me, "You must be tired from the training. It must have been tough losing your husband. Don't overdo it." However, the reason I was in a hurry to get home wasn't due to fatigue or the sorrow of James' death. I needed to contact Robert and ask about the situation with my sister-in-law. Considering it might turn into a serious conversation, I was hesitant to use my personal phone in a public place where anyone could overhear. On my way home, I sent an email to Robert expressing my desire to talk to him in person. "I have something to talk about regarding my wife, too," Robert replied immediately. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and called Robert. Robert seemed to have been waiting for my call and responded immediately. "Gina, I'm glad. I was just about to contact you," Robert started with a relieved voice. I told him about Mary staying at her mother's house and went on to explain that she was making false claims. I told him that I had been accused of trying to take over the house by sending my mother-in-law to a nursing home based on her lies, and as a result, I was driven out of the house. "Really? Where are you now?" Robert asked in surprise. I replied that I was at my parents' house then and detailed everything that had happened since the funeral. "I'm really sorry about that," he apologized sincerely. "No, Robert, you don't need to apologize," I responded. My sister-in-law had a history of leaving home without notice and spending money freely, which seemed to have intensified since her son Alex went to college. "Wait, Mary was receiving money from her mother? What happened to that money?" he asked. I knew my mother-in-law had been giving my sister-in-law a significant amount of money, but I thought Robert knew about it. "I haven't heard anything about that. I've been paying for Alex's tuition, and our family has always been in a tight financial situation." Robert replied, sounding surprised. "Actually, I have a request. Could you come to my parents' house next Sunday?" I proposed. I felt a bit presumptuous making such a request, but I decided to try it. Their house was about a 30-minute drive from my parents' house and was on the way to my mother-in-law's house. I had planned to meet Robert and then head to my mother-in-law's house together. "Understood. I know roughly where it is, so I'll rely on navigation. I'll contact you again when I'm close." Robert agreed to my suggestion and ended the call. Shortly after, I received a call from my mother-in-law's house. What could it be? Just a day after the previous events? With that thought, I answered the phone. "Hey, you. You used money without permission, didn't you? Give it back immediately." My sister-in-law yelled at me. "What do you mean by using money without permission?" I asked, confused. I couldn't understand what my sister-in-law was talking about and felt completely misunderstood. When I checked Mom's bank account, the balance was too low. "What did you use it for?" My sister-in-law pressed, but I had certainly not done such a thing. It's true that I forgot to deposit the planned $2,000 to being preoccupied with my mother-in-law's illness and caregiving procedures, but I never withdrew money from the savings without permission. Is there some misunderstanding? I have made deposits into her account, but I've never looked inside the passbook. I firmly replied. My sister-in-law seemed unsatisfied with my answer and raised her voice. "Come over on Sunday. Let's clarify this matter." This was convenient for me, so I replied, "Understood. Let's discuss it in front of her," and ended the call. On the planned Sunday, Robert arrived at my parents' house earlier than expected. "Oh, you are?" my mother said, surprised at Robert's sudden appearance. "Yes, he's the husband of my late husband's sister." "Mom, you've met him before, haven't you?" I explained. My mother couldn't immediately recall who he was, but eventually remembered, yes, I've seen him before." Seeing my mother's realization and joy, I explained, "Actually, I wanted to consult him about my husband's family matters." After leading Robert to the living room and briefly exchanging greetings, I took out an envelope. "I want you to see this." The envelope contains several photos and a report. As I spread the photos and the report in front of Robert, he exclaimed in surprise, "What? This is..." The photos showed my sister-in-law with a young man, enjoying herself at a nightclub and heading to a hotel. The report from a detective agency detailed evidences of my sister-in-law's expenses. James entrusted this to me before he passed away, and since he died before we could discuss it, I only recently looked at it. I explained the situation to Robert. James had suspected his sister of reckless spending and had secretly commissioned an investigation. He intended to discuss the results with me, but passed away before he could. Robert trembled with anger at the photos. I thought she was frequently leaving the house, but to think she was doing this. With a sigh full of indignation, Robert said, "Gina, can you come with me right now? This situation can't be ignored." I had intended to do so from the start and nodded immediately. 30 minutes later, we arrived at my mother-in-law's house and rang the doorbell. "It's Gina, I've come as promised," I said, and soon heard my sister-in-law's annoyed voice. "How long do you plan to make me wait?" The sound of unlocking the door came, and the door opened. "Come in." My sister-in-law greeted us, but upon seeing Robert, she tried to close the door. Robert quickly grabbed the doorknob. "Mary, we need to talk. Can you listen for a moment?" he said, holding the door. His voice was calm, but his anger was palpable. My sister-in-law struggled to close the door but couldn't overpower the man's strength and eventually had to leave it open. "Fine. What do you want?" she said that while allowing us to stay at the entrance, seemingly not wanting my mother-in-law to be aware of Robert's unexpected visit. "Is that you in these pictures? Who's the man next to you?" Robert asked, confronting his wife with the photos. "Where did you get these?" "No way." Mary was shocked upon seeing the photos. "Do you remember?" "Well, who is this?" "Answer me." Robert, usually mild-mannered, pressed his wife. "Just a friend. Can't I have young friends?" My sister-in-law retorted defiantly. "A friend? Don't lie, I know everything." Robert yelled at her. "Why? Who told you?" Realizing my sister-in-law could no longer continue her lies, she looked defeated. "Your late brother James was concerned about your spending and had it investigated." Robert calmly revealed the truth. "You demanded money from your mother and squandered it all on a nightclub." "I'm aware of the entire situation," Robert continued, trying to contain his anger. "It's hard enough to pay for Alex's tuition. And you exhaust our living expenses and still dare to ask for more money? What a comfortable life, huh?" He continued, his voice filled with rage. His anger did not subside. "That's enough. I don't care if you leave us. We're getting a divorce," he coldly declared to her. "Eh? What?" My sister-in-law muttered in shock. "Didn't you hear me? We're getting a divorce. I'll send the divorce papers later, fill them out, and send them back," Robert stated bluntly. At those words, my sister-in-law collapsed onto a seat. Later, my sister-in-law and Robert proceeded with the divorce through a lawyer and ultimately finalized it. They agreed to consider her spending at the nightclubs as a reason for compensation and to share the payment of Alex's tuition until his university graduation. However, there was a possibility that she might default on the payments, so they agreed that a lawyer would collect the payments monthly. After receiving her share of my father-in-law's inheritance, my sister-in-law had squandered it all on her expenses at the nightclub and then set her sights on my mother-in-law's property. But she found the bank account balance to be lower than expected, and her plan failed. In fact, it seemed that the money James and I had been giving my mother-in-law was used for living expenses and given to my sister-in-law as she demanded, leaving almost no savings behind. My in-law's house belonged to my mother-in-law, and there was probably no more money left to give to my sister-in-law unless the house was sold. I learned from the caregiver that my sister-in-law, realizing her failure, had abandoned my mother-in-law and left. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law continued to live a modest life alone, with the help of the caregiver.